Well, hello everybody. Tis the Drinker here, and we're going to be talking about Last Action Hero this evening. It's been a little while since I've done a happy hour, actually, so it's good to be back doing them again. Nice little thing to break things up, and yeah, I'm very aware that I'm soon going to have to jump into the festering mire of shit that is the Rings of Power. I'll probably do a live stream on that tomorrow evening when I've seen the first episode, and I can give you my thoughts on it. But hey, before then, it's like a little palate cleanser. We're gonna go back in time to the heady days of 1993 to talk about The Last Action Hero because man, it's a movie that's given me a lot of conflicted feelings over the years, and I think there's kind of a lot to say about it. So I am joined this evening by one of my patrons who I ended up talking to quite a bit about this behind the scenes, and we decided, fuck it, let's just do a happy hour on this, and give us all a chance to give our thoughts on the movie. So here he is. This is Darkhour. Thank you for joining us, sir.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, my friend, and it's good to have you on. So yeah, thanks for doing this.
No, thank you for having me. Honestly, like I said backstage with you that when I pitched this idea to you after talking to you several times about it, I was not expecting to be on your main channel. That was not something that I was like, oh yeah, we'll do it. It'll be for the patrons, which I don't know how many you have, but
yeah, you were probably thinking we might get seen by like 100 people or something.
Yeah,
but
not
we're on the main
upwards of
channel.
like 10,000 people, but and like I was saying to you, I tried to make a makeshift studio as quickly as I could for it. So,
No, it's good, man. And it's yeah, we were saying before, like I love how it just kind of mirrors what we've got in the background here, so people are going to be seeing double. And yeah, give it a few more of these, and I will be too. But yeah, anyway, man, yeah. So like Last Action Hero, it's a funny one, right? Because I still remember this back when I was a kid. It was always a tradition amongst my friends and I. Like when it was one of our birthdays, it would we'd go to like whoever's house it was, rent a movie on VHS because we're old as fuck, and that was still a thing back then. And it was usually action movies, and we'd have the time of our lives watching like Terminator 2 or things like that, And someone had the bright idea of getting this out, and we all thought it was going to be like this absolutely kick-ass action movie that was going to end them all. It's the last action hero. Like fucking hell, this sounds amazing. And then yeah, then we saw it, and yeah, normally we were glued to the TV, throughout the whole thing, whatever movie it might be, because we're young kids at the time, and we're all about seeing like people explode and gun porn and all that. And there was usually a bit of titty and well, because it was 80s action movies. But yeah, by the end of that, we were just starting to like fidget and talk amongst ourselves, and we weren't really paying attention. And I just yeah, it kind of passed us by really as a film. I feel like none of us got it. It wasn't what we expected it to be, and I think in a lot of ways it wasn't what anyone expected it to be back in 1993. It was yeah, a movie that was perhaps a little bit ahead of its time as a piece of satire, as a commentary on Hollywood and the action genre, and it just felt like this weird thing that didn't really connect with people. And the fact that it came out, I think, the same week as Jurassic Park, like the biggest movie of the early '90s, absolutely sunk it. I don't know what your experience was with this movie when you saw it.
I was like 5 when it came out, like somewhere like around that age, and so I didn't see it until I was a little older. So maybe I had a greater appreciation for it than the time when it came out. Like you said, there was a lot of satiricalness to it. It was maybe not the best. Definitely wasn't the best marketed movie ever because they screwed it up a lot when it came to that. But it's always had a special spot to me because I'm a huge Arnold fan. I've mentioned it on your patron exclusive things before. It's actually pretty cool because I'm by nationality, which I know is more of an American thing than a European thing, but I am Austrian, so it's actually a pretty cool thing. That's like I am what he is. And, but it just was one of those things that I remember watching it as a kid, and it was just so much different than the rest of his movies. And it was kind of like a turning point almost for his career because he went way more comedy afterwards.
It was a yeah. I mean, I might as well talk about this now, but yeah, the movie ultimately bombed at the
Oh,
cinema.
yes.
Well, it wasn't an outright bomb, but it didn't make back its money, and I think it lost the studio about 20 or 30 million dollars ultimately. And it's a weird one because Arnold had been absolutely like riding high before this. Like he'd had a
Yeah.
string of hits, throughout the late 80s. He'd done Commando, he'd done Predator, he'd done Terminator 2. So at that point, he was like the hottest property in Hollywood.
He had like
And
5 or 6 massive hits right in a row.
yeah, and it kind of seemed like he was unstoppable. He was just this like box office juggernaut, and he can make any film work. And yeah, this movie, it's a bit like in Rocky 4, when he's fighting Ivan Drago and he cuts him, like hits
Yes.
him
Yeah.
like with this wild punch and it gives him a big cut above his eye. And it's not a big injury by itself, but it shows that he's human and he can be beaten. And it kind of seemed like that with Arnold as well. Like it really dented his whole like box office aura in a bad way. And he was lucky in the sense that he kind of bounced back with True Lies. Like I know that was a pretty big success, but after that, man,
Yeah, he had like
like
Twins,
the 90s was,
Junior, what was it? End of Days was
he
like
did
that was like
Eraser. Yeah, he did
Eraser.
He did Junior, which
Yeah.
he did he did Eraser, which was just a big
Yeah.
old nothing burger.
A
He
lot of
did
his later 90s stuff just didn't pan out.
Batman and Robin, yeah, which was horrible. And then took a few years off because I think he had heart surgery and stuff. But, then he did End of Days
Yeah.
and The Sixth Day, all of which flopped.
I remember the marketing for End of Days. People were like, he's fought aliens, he's fought machines, now he fights the devil. It was like
Exactly. That movie was weird because it was like trying to be all somber and serious and stuff, but like beneath it all, it was still like an Arnold action movie.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, right? Arnold was like someone who didn't kind of gradually fade out. It's like someone flicked a switch, right? And he went from like cool and awesome and unstoppable to like this kind of dated, slightly like silly, relic of a different time. And it's like it happens like almost overnight. And I think you can pinpoint it probably to this movie.
It was that
I think
happened to
this was
almost every major action star of that era. Like they almost all just faded out almost immediately, like in the mid 90s. Like it was like they all had like one movie that just kind of changed the trajectory of their careers, and it was it was a zeitgeist of the way movies were being
It
viewed.
was.
And
Up until that point, like the big bombastic action movie was the king of the cinema. It was
yes,
very much like the comic book movies of today. And that was what had ruled the box office back in the 80s. But by the time you get to like you're just getting into the 90s, Terminator 2 was probably the last great like action flick, I think, that harkens back to that era. And even that like was kind of a remarkable film because it's not aged at all. It's weird. But
yeah, there's
anyway,
very little that you look at with Terminator 2 and you're like, that doesn't look good. There's like a couple of moments, but that was just technical limitations, but it wasn't really that bad.
yeah, but I think by that early 90s period, there was a feeling of like, times are changing and that genre isn't as viable anymore. And this was the movie which was almost like there to cap it all off by just turning it into satire and saying, isn't it all a bit silly? These big muscle bounds like Superman almost who like can fight implausible odds and like do incredible feats of strength and all that, and they're just like kind of silly, aren't they? Like let's laugh at it. And that's generally the last stage of a genre before it dies out. And so that's kind of what you had. And action movies they didn't disappear, but they changed completely. Like they started to move more into like the realms of kung fu and stuff. Like I think Eastern directors started to filter over to the West. And that's why you started getting John Woo movies, which became really prevalent in the 90s. And then it was very much about the next generation of action stars who were younger and more athletic and more agile. It was a different time then. And those big like 80s muscle men like Stallone and Schwarzenegger, they really kind of went out of fashion at that point. And this movie was I guess the thing that punctuated it. It was like this was the switch where it happened.
I've always said that the first real, like I would say the last nail in the coffin for the 80s action movie was The Matrix. The
Yes.
Matrix was pretty much the movie that changed how people looked at action movies.
Yes. That really, like, how many Matrix kind of clones did you get? How many movies tried to do bullet time
All of them.
after that? Like, it was everywhere, man.
Literally every movie tried to do whether it was satirical bullet time or legitimate bullet time. I think like 90% of movies at the time was doing, like, you had it in like things like Scary Movie, even like stuff like that. They were just doing it for just because it was the in thing.
Yeah.
And also there was a huge change at the time in like viral marketing became a lot more prevalent, which changed the way that movies were people were getting exposed to movies beforehand. Like, hype trains were a lot different back then. Like,
Yeah.
like one of the things that when I was, doing research for this, that I found, this was supposed to be Last Action Hero, that is, was supposed to be the first movie to be advertised in space, actually.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
about this.
yeah, they actually had paid $500,000 to like paint the side of the space shuttle, and it didn't launch until after the movie was already a flop. It was
This is, oh Christ, yeah.
like,
Everything went wrong for this one. I heard as well, like, apparently there was disastrous test screenings
mhm.
of early cuts of the film that leaked, like the results of those test screenings leaked, and it just poisoned the box office for this film. Like, people were like, "Oh nope, stay away from this one. It's awful." And yeah, like it just, it's like everything kind of conspired to sink this film, and it didn't help that it wasn't a great movie anyway. Like, I guess we'll talk about we should probably talk about the actual film itself
Yes,
in a
yeah,
minute. But yeah, like all the stuff that led up to it is just kind of interesting because it's such an interesting product of its time, and the decisions that went into making this thing are kind of fascinating, really, as a piece of like Hollywood history. Because I know that Shane Black did the original script for this, and it was
mhm.
way different from what we got in the finished product. It was meant to be like way more serious, more grounded in a lot of ways, and it was meant to be this like meta commentary on the destructive nature of like these action heroes and how it's just like a cycle of violence that keeps perpetuating itself. I mean, I can see why that was canned because in the early 90s, I don't imagine that would have played terribly well. Now it probably would have done mega bucks. Like,
Yeah.
people
It
were
was
all
actually
about
the
that.
original script was called Extremely Violent. That was the name of it. That was like the working title originally. It was rewritten by multiple people. Actually, Carrie Fisher rewrote
I
it
heard
as
that she
well.
worked on this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she had something to do with it. The only scene that actually exists from the original script is the sequence where he plays Hamlet when he's like daydreaming.
I
You know,
really like that scene.
that scene is fantastic.
It's so ridiculous and it doesn't fit into anything, but it's just
Well,
there.
well, that's because it's the only remnant from the original script. So that's
Oh,
why it
okay.
feels like it doesn't fit. And actually, the woman playing the teacher was the widow of Sir Laurence Olivier, and they're
Right.
showing that version of Hamlet when he starts daydreaming. So it was a really like, even that was like a meta moment in and of itself. Like, that they got literally the widow of the person that's of the movie that they're showing in class.
They got a lot of people in this, and this is one of the weird things about this film. The cast is superb. You've got, like, obviously Arnold's like the
Yes.
definitive action hero. You have Charles Dance, who's like brings just gravitas to everything that he does. Like, this man brings gravitas to sitting on the toilet and like still somehow manages to look authoritative and awesome. You've got what is it, F. Murray Abraham, who they keep making references to Amadeus, like how he
Yes,
killed
he killed
Mozart.
Mozart. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got Anthony Quinn, who's like this character actor from, like, he's been in movies for like 50 years by that point.
Hmm.
So many people, and like I got
And
the
that's
real
not even like
impression.
the people playing themselves.
Exactly, yeah, like, cameos from everybody, and it's, like, obviously a case of, like, Arnold called in a lot of favors just to get
Yes.
people in this. Um, you know, why not? Of course you can, because that you're Arnold, and yeah, it's there's so much potential there to do awesome things, but man, this movie squanders them bad. Like, I guess we'll talk about that pretty soon, but, when I think about what could have been done with a film like this, it's so frustrating.
Yeah,
Um,
they had all basically the way that they cast this movie was almost the same as like how they would go on. Well, Stallone would go on to cast like the Expendables. It was just making a bunch of calls to friends and, hey, do you want to be in this project? You know,
Yeah.
I'm doing this thing. It's going to be this out there craziness, and you just want to be involved. You could just play yourself. You could just like, that's basically how it worked out.
Yeah. Someone else pointed out Ian McKellen played Death. Yep.
Yes.
I love how this movie came out like 30 years ago and he still looked old as fuck. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
him
think Ian
and
McKellen ever
Patrick
looked
Stewart
like.
have looked the same age since like the early 90s. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense.
Someone else pointed out as well. Charles Dance was in Space Truckers.
Charles Dance actually wasn't the original choice for the character of Benedict. It was originally they wanted Alan Rickman.
Oh,
But
okay.
he was way too expensive for what they were doing. So they cast Charles Dance. And when Charles Dance showed up on the first, after he found out about that was the reason they cast him. He showed up with a shirt that said, "I'm cheaper than Alan Rickman" on the first day of filming.
There you go. I mean, I love him in this movie. Like,
oh yeah, he's probably
in
the
a
best
movie
character.
with flaws and stuff, like, god damn, he absolutely steals every scene he's in, and you can tell he's having fun with it, but yeah, he was in Space Truckers, and like Muller and I think have joked about this because he's a big old Charles Dance fan, and it's like he has made some horrendous choices when it comes to being in movies. Like, he's been in some fucking stinkers.
It seems pretty common for some of the best actors to do that. I'm not really sure what that trend is. That maybe it's just that they take what they can get because a lot of the other roles are going to just names that aren't necessarily the best actor, but they're a name, which is pretty
I think
common.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I think
they
with
just take
him,
whatever they
like,
want, whatever they can
it,
get. I mean,
I think with him, it very much is a case of like you've got an authoritative, like English actor who can be a really good villain. Like, because Hollywood was always about casting Brits as villains. Like, it was just the done thing, and so like he could easily fill that role, and he just somehow brings gravitas to whatever he does. And shit, man, maybe he's got gambling habits or hookers or something that he needs to pay off, and like it's got to
possibly
take a paycheck.
it's like the Nicolas Cage syndrome. He keeps going broke, so he has to keep taking whatever they'll get him.
Keeps buying like dinosaur skeletons and Austrian
Oh man,
castles and shit. Like,
but yeah,
can't stop.
he has probably all the best lines in this movie, like by far. Like anytime he rips into the Vivaldi, his like mob
Oh,
boss.
Anthony Quinn,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He's like any line, it's like him ripping apart like the horrible analogies or like just getting the reference completely wrong, like the 180 360 line. That like it's
I was gonna actually talk now, like, about the film itself as it plays out, because one of the things that jumps out at me so much about this film, rewatching it today just to prep for this stream as well, tonally, this shit is all over the place, and it's really bizarre. Like, it's so jarring because the very first scene is like a mixture of serious action, because you get like the actual Jack Slater movie,
Jack
that's
Slater
how it
3
kicks off. Jack
specifically. Yeah.
Slater 3, yeah. And so you've got like comedy elements with like the police chief who's always yelling at people, and Jack Slater who comes in like walking across the top of like squad cars and stuff. But then you've got like the Ripper who's got his son hostage and who ends up like killing him by like pulling him off a building. And it's like,
Yeah, it
hell.
goes from comedic to like complete just Saw level of like gross, like the concept of him just wanting to rip this child apart with an axe.
It's dark stuff.
Yeah.
And so you've got that. But then you contrast that with like what you get later in the film where people are getting killed by ice cream cones from exploding ice cream trucks, and like Arnie's firing off at his deadpan puns, and you've got animated cats and stuff, and it's like such a weird contrast. Like, I get that like you're not meant to think about it too much, but like how is this meant to be any kind of consistent movie world where like ridiculous stuff like that can happen on the one hand, and then you've got like dark drama and kids getting murdered and stuff? Like, it's such a bizarre contrast that they're trying to work into this.
Zach Penn actually got they weren't like threats or anything. They were just like complaints about the opening scene. Apparently it made a lot of like because they were like the marketing was very much toward like young teens, like 11, 12-year-old, which was weird because that was something that the 90s did a lot, was market movies toward like young boys that probably they shouldn't. There was toy lines for things that didn't make any sense for there to be. And they got a lot of complaints about like that scene. You started it with them murdering a child, and it made my kid cry. Like, how am I supposed to like they can't enjoy the movie if that's how you start it? So
Yeah.
apparently he wasn't a big fan of leaving that scene in, but it was so integral to the storyline that they couldn't have possibly removed it.
I get, like, thematically it plays in pretty well, and this is the thing, it would have worked fine if then when Danny goes into the film world, it's somewhat grounded. It's kind of got that tone where it's like a kind of hard-boiled detective kind of movie series.
Yeah.
Instead of what you actually get, which is like just goofy, over the top slapstick comedy. So it's bizarre from that point of view, but it does at least, it establishes who Jack Slater is. Like, he's, the action hero, whatever. And the main character, Danny, who's just like this kid who's obsessed with movies, particularly the Jack Slater movies, and lives in New York and has just a kind of a shitty life. And this is where, like, one of my criticisms of the first act is that it's really weirdly fragmented. It feels like a bunch of disconnected things that happen that don't really tie together. And you get him, he goes to like this rundown movie theater. This old guy Nick runs it, and no one else goes. He just gets like private screenings, which seems awesome. Like, even if the place is a fucking dive, like, it's still your own cinema where you can just do whatever you want. Great. But yeah, he doesn't really go to school, and he cuts classes and stuff to do this shit. And he seems to go there at like midnight screenings. And that's when you find out that he's got the chance to watch the new Jack Slater movie, like Jack Slater 4, which is, it's going to be coming out in a couple of days, and he gets the opportunity to watch like an advanced screening of it, which is nice of Nick. I don't know how he still gets like the prints for movies when his theater's dead, basically.
Yeah, that's a bit of a strange thing. It's like they even say later in the movie that the theater's being demolished, and like that doesn't make any sense. Like, you just got a print for a movie that hasn't even come out yet. Why would, if it's being demolished, why would they send you anything?
Yeah. It's weird as well, because then you get him at school. He seems to go to school for like 5 minutes, and what the fuck do? They put a movie on for him, obviously. And you get that scene that you referenced earlier, where it's like, it starts off, it's Hamlet that's playing with Laurence Olivier, and he just like goes into a daydream of Arnold being there, and he's like Hamlet just killing people with machine guns and stuff, which is, it's hilariously stupid.
Who says I'm fair?
Yeah,
that's such a great line.
It is funny. This is the thing, like, it's so ridiculous and pointless, but it is kind of funny for how over the top it is. But then, yeah, you know how you talk about scene transitions in films, how like one scene should logically lead into the next one, so you kind of understand what's happened. But with this, he has his daydream, and then it just kind of hard cuts into like him watching TV at home, and I'm like, what just happened there? Like, so basically, he spent his whole day at school watching a movie.
Literally perfectly with my stream, by the way. Like, I have the movie playing, and you're sunk up perfectly with it. That's fantastic. Right. Like, as you said that, it transitioned to him watching TV.
And yeah, it's like, okay, it just feels like there's nothing in between. Like, okay, what did he do at school? Like, what happened? Does he know anyone? Does he have any friends? Like, what can you tell us about this kid? Like, it's so weirdly isolating. This first act, like, I feel like this whole thing's just taking place in a vacuum, and like there's Danny and his mom and Nick, and that's it. That's like the only people who exist in the world.
Yeah, like I said, when it comes to that transition, like I said, that was the only sequence that existed from the original script. So that's probably why it feels a little disjointed. It was likely that they weren't even going to keep that, and it was just such a good scene. Like, it was just so well like received by everyone involved that they were like, okay, we'll just work it in here somehow, and that's why it seems like it's just planted with no explanation.
Yeah.
Like, which I mean, that's not uncommon especially with a movie that's had like 20 rewrites like this one did. So
Yeah.
where things just feel very, out of place.
Yeah, and then like a lot of this stuff that happens next is just necessary to establish like the characters and stuff. Like his mom, I guess, works really shit hours because she is a single parent. Um,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
that's also a real dark way that they kind of like drop it in there, where she's just like, I didn't plan on being a widow before 40, and it's just like, well, that's an exposition dump that probably should have had a little bit more set up than just that. But go
I
on.
know there's a lot of this in this film where it's like they touch on interesting ideas like that. There's others later with Slater when he's in his like actual home and it's just this shitty motel somewhere. But
Yes,
they don't really do anything with it. And with this, it's like, okay, you can kind of infer that Danny wants a father figure in his life, and so that's what Jack Slater is. It's like a male role model that you can look up to, like the hero that always wins and saves the
they
day and
were
all
almost
that
trying
stuff.
to recreate the John Connor Terminator thing from like
A
the
little bit, yeah. And then I think you could have played into that more later in the film, where it's like there is an almost paternal relationship there, and like there's more said about it, but like it doesn't really do anything with it, and it's a shame because it feels like I don't know, maybe there's a draft of the script out there where that's dealt with a bit better, but like there's nothing really in the movie to connect that, and
you did.
it's kind of a
Yeah.
shame.
You did mention his apartment later. One thing that I actually kind of, when rewatching the movie, I thought about was, so he goes into the film, obviously, so it's not playing out the way the film was originally recorded. Like
Yeah,
that's kind of the whole. So that's, I always kind of just, assumed that was like that the apartment was the way it was because he's not there very often. I actually had another thought about it. Like that's not even supposed to be a set in the movie. Like it's literally, if you think about it, so he's the way the movie's playing out of Jack Slater 4 is completely scenes are happening that shouldn't happen.
yeah,
So there's sequences where like there wouldn't be a set for that scene. So it's a
yeah,
completely empty apartment with nothing, and it's like it's almost like makeshift, like they just made up a scene. Like, oh, throw a guy in the closet. Just put a guy in there and he'll just shoot him and it'll just be like, well, we don't have a set. Okay, just do it in a random apartment. Like, it's kind of like, it was the first time I ever thought of it like that.
It's a funny one because it feels like the kind of scene that would almost put a sinister light on Jack Slater as a character because it's like if you go to someone's house, right, and they don't have anything in their room, it's like a TV and a chair, and then there's no decorations, there's no like personality to it. It's like this guy's probably a fucking psychopath, and
Yes.
it's kind of like that where it's like, well, why don't you have anything like the
He has the same jacket and shirt over and over again. It's like a
yeah, and
cartoon. It's like
I
a
know they
cartoon opens up the closet and it's the same shirt like 100 times.
yeah, and I guess like you can make a commentary on like, okay, who is this guy outside of like being a cop and like fighting bad guys and saving the day? Like, is there just nothing to his life? And there's something like inherently like partly tragic and partly kind of terrifying about that. Like, what are you outside of this? And again, you could do stuff with that if the script had been a bit more savvy about what it wanted to focus on, but it kind of feels like it's too unfocused and it's too much about the goofy laughs and the silliness of it. And this is I was going to say this like at the end, but like my overall feeling with this film is I the first act is really fragmented and badly put together as a piece of narrative. I hate the second act because it's like that's when they're in the movie, and that's when it's all the ridiculous slapstick humor and stuff. But I quite like the third act where they go into New York and like Jack Slater's in the real world,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think it's got the best direction from McTiernan. That's the bit that feels the most authentic, and it's got some pretty decent payoffs and some decent performances, and yeah, like that's the bit where it actually works. It's the middle bit that really lets this film down.
Well, the middle section, there's aspects of it that I don't like a lot, and then there's ones that I do. I think like it when it starts to get beyond ridiculous is like the whole funeral sequence. Like
Yeah.
that whole, but I think up to that point, it's not too bad. Like, him trying to convince him he's in a movie is actually has some merits to it.
That's good. And
Yeah.
you know what I like is, they talk about the bit with the area codes, and it's like, well, how come
Yes.
every number starts with 555? Okay, it's an obvious trope of movies. Um, More stuff like that would be great. Like, because obviously the guys who write this are in the movie industry and they know all the shit, like all the tropes, all the cliches that go into films. A lot of which are quite subtle. And it's like, okay, you could work so many of them into this and just like deconstruct them a little bit. That would be great. But then, they choose to waste screen time on fucking animated cats.
Yeah,
And like that was,
I never liked the anime. I mean, even though it's played by Danny DeVito, which is the greatest selection for voice actor for that kind of situation, it
yeah,
always felt really weird.
yeah.
That the whole like them pairing up the different officers, like the rabbi, which I'm not really sure what
Well,
that's a reference to, but
I don't know what the reference is there specifically, but it's like I get the point is that like so many buddy cop movies are just founded on like getting two opposites and putting them together, and watching them spark off each other. And so it's almost like in this precinct, like
yeah,
every pairing of like partners is like we have to pick the most like incompatible people and put them together.
I think the one I like the best is the black and white
Humphrey
Humphrey
Bogart.
Bogart. That's probably my favorite one. I also like the like probably my favorite little detail besides like the the T-1000 walking out of the that's probably the greatest cameo in the history of movies. T-1000 just walks out of the police station. But
That and when he was in Wayne's World,
yes,
where
that
like
one
they're
too.
parked and
Yeah.
it's like,
Have you
have you
seen this
seen this
boy?
boy?
Um,
Ah!
but the fact that the police station itself has valet parking is
Yeah.
kind of hilarious. They just there are certain aspects of it that worked out well, and then other ones that didn't, like you said with the animated cat and the um there's just like there was certain like things that were just they had going for them that I think they could have explored way more.
Yeah, and like when you see like the cops walking by, right? And like most of them are in uniform, but then you'll get women who are in like bright red spandex outfits or
Yes.
whatever, just like crazy ridiculous, like nobody would wear that. And like why did you put that in there? What was that meant to like show us? Because like it's not like that's a trope of an action film. Nobody ever wore outfits like that. That's just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
like
like
weird dystopian future things that they just
it,
randomly threw in.
yeah, like it's a really strange thing to put in there, but then yeah, like you say, there's other stuff which works better. And it would allow you to just play with the tropes of cop movies and all that stuff.
Well, like the whole sequence, the whole chase sequence when he first gets into the movie is pretty well done with like him pointing out things that don't make sense, like the scenery changed. Like, how did that happen? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, the ice cream cone hitting the dude in the back of the head, which is kind of like a random preview of what would go on to be him as Mr. Freeze, because he says like to coin a
yeah,
phrase and like ice
yeah.
that
Ice
guy.
that guy.
um, but like there's like little aspects of that I loved. Which, but I had the scene with the chicken. Did you recognize who the driver was of the truck he was playing chicken with?
Was he the Scorpion from
Yes, he was El
Predator 2?
Scorpio from Predator 2.
Yes.
And I actually
That
looked him
guy's
up.
officially a legend for all time.
Well, here's
for
a
me.
list of some of the other movies he was in. This isn't all of them, but he was in Demolition Man, Falling Down, Hot Shots Part 2, Die Hard, Roadhouse, Scarface, Bad Boys 7, Batman and Robin, Lethal Weapons 3 and 4, The Italian Job, and Fast and the Furious 3 through 6.
Holy
So,
shit.
oh, and The Expendables. He's actually in a lot of things that like you just don't realize. He's like a extra that just keeps
Yeah.
ending up in things.
This is something, right? And I don't think you really get it anymore, but like I used to notice this back in the days, like in the 80s and the 90s with action movies. There were just like jobber extras who would just
Yes.
be in fucking everything. Like one of the other guys that was on that truck that they were fighting in that chase scene was the guy from Die Hard. Like, the sort of Asian guy, and he's
Yes.
got
Yeah.
like a goatee beard and long hair.
Mhm.
Like he was an extra in so many things as well. He was just your dependable henchman guy. He would be on screen for like 10 seconds and then get killed.
Makes sense with McTiernan being the director that he would bring in guys like that.
Yeah,
Guys that were in other things that he did. So,
but yeah, I know, like I kind of skipped past it. The other thing that jumped out at me just about Act One, when I was talking about it being really fragmented, is like Danny's mum's gone out to work that evening. She's told him not to leave the house, and he wants to go and see Jack Slater 4 with Nick because he's got like a midnight screening, and he's really excited to go. And he eventually like opens the door, and straight away some dude just like bursts in and like, he's there to rob the place basically, and handcuffs him to like a toilet seat in the bathroom, and he can't find anything worth stealing. He's like pissed off at him, and so he just throws like the handcuff key into the toilet bowl and then leaves. And I get that that's necessary to set up the key for the handcuffs later on.
Yeah, the payoff of later.
But it's like at the time when you see it, it's such a fucking weird, just random occurrence scene. It just feels like so like disconnected from everything else. And it just much like the fantasy bit with Hamlet and stuff. It feels like it just came from a different movie or a different script, and they just threw it in there. It's such a strange scene.
Yeah, odds are it did. That's the thing. Is odds are that was another one of the part of the rewrites that ended up turning into the Frankenstein script that it ended up being.
Yeah, because all of that is just to set up the handcuff key. That's all it's for.
Yeah,
and I feel like there just would have been easier ways to integrate that into the story than this. Because then he goes to like the police precinct, files a report. Just again, it eats up screen time, and then he leaves and goes to the cinema. And it's like, why did you have to do all that stuff to get him to this point?
Yeah, it's a bit contrived to get him there. It was all just to like have the whole "you're late." I was starting to think you weren't going to show up, which doesn't even really play into anything. It just kind of, it's like if he would have shown up and he would have been like Nick wouldn't have been there, and it had it actually played into something. But like he just kind of waited around. He just like it's like it's already whatever. I think he told him to be there at midnight, and it's like probably like 2 a.m. by the time he gets there. Like,
how fucking irresponsible is Nick as well? Like, this is like a 12-year-old kid or something, and you're like, yeah, come here at midnight. Like,
I mean,
don't you think his mom might have something to say about this?
Yeah, he's actually pretty irresponsible when you think about the fact that he has the magic ticket. Which he says it's like this was given to a guy from
Houdini,
India to Tibet to Houdini, and he just tears it. It's like this piece of like history, this like literal piece of history, and he's just like, okay, there you go, need your ticket stub. Like, you could have just handed it to him.
That was like, for the writers, that was like the quickest, easiest fix for this kind of thing. It's like, how are we going to get him into the movie? Fucking magic movie ticket. I don't know. Yeah. It's like, yeah, okay, just give it to him. Fine.
And it's almost like it was like a quick fix in and of itself. How are we going to get him out if this ticket gets stolen? Well, we'll rip it in half, so there's two halves, or like we'll get like that whole thing, or that not out, back in, I should say. But I just like when I was rewatching it, I was like, why would you tear that? Like, that's literally priceless. It's a piece of it's like a 100+ year-old ticket that was just handed to you, and he just here you go.
Yeah,
here you go. Priceless piece of history gone.
You know what's also funny as well, and like I always wondered this as a kid. Like, so the thing that gets Danny into the movie is like the ticket activates while he's watching this action scene, and like a guy throws a stick of dynamite, and it comes out of the movie.
It's like 6 sticks, and it's like a brick of dynamite.
It's and so he rolls down the aisle towards him, and he's like, "Oh shit, I need to run away from this," and that's what blasts him into the movie. But like, that dynamite went off, and would it not have flattened the entire movie?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Not like that. I love how his response to it, to like, okay, I'll slow it down by throwing my popcorn on top of it. Like, you just hear like the sizzle. It's like the butter sizzling.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually was thinking about that too. It's like, because later on they come out and there's not even the seats are busted. Like,
like what happened there?
Theater. Which kind of makes you wonder how real that actually was. But
there's a lot of shit like that where it's like, okay, I guess we just have to infer that opened the portal or something. Like, I don't know.
I think they just hope you forget it. They're just
Yeah.
like, hopefully they'll just forget that this dynamite went off here.
But yeah, it blasts him into the movie, and you get all these chase scenes and stuff. And the one thing I'll give the film credit for is there's a bit of fairly good setup and payoff and foreshadowing. Because a lot of the things that you see in this film, where Jack Slater does, like, he plays chicken with people, it gets replicated again in the real world, and it goes horribly wrong. Like, he tries to play chicken, and the cars just smash into each other.
Yeah,
as they would, because
yeah.
nobody's going to blink.
He like shoots at cars and they don't blow up in the real world, and he's like, I think your cabs are bulletproof.
This, yeah, that
Which
genuinely,
they probably should be in New York City, but
I think so. Yeah, that was genuinely one of the bits I really appreciated, because it's like finally a bit of realism in any movie. Whereas, like, yeah, he's like all confident, like, here's another explosion for your movie, kid, and he's blasting away with this Desert Eagle, and all it does is put a couple of holes in the trunk of this cab, and he just looks at his
it's
gun.
even I love how, like, he even says in that scene. I know we're way ahead now, but he's like, you have to reload guns in this world.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
throughout the movie, he doesn't reload his gun once. And, like,
yeah.
depending on the caliber, a Desert Eagle holds anywhere from 7 to 9 bullets, and he just fires like 40 out of the gun. Like,
Yeah,
it never.
he must, like, when he's shooting the chopper later
Yeah,
on, like, oh, he must cap off about 15 or 20 rounds at that
yeah,
thing. Like, he just does not stop.
yeah. So it definitely, like, there are, like, really great moments where they point that stuff out. It's like, things that have been happening up to this point that shouldn't happen, and they're like, no, that doesn't work here. Which
Hmm.
I think is something that a lot of people like to say about movies too. It's a thing that, like, you're watching something like this and you're like, oh, he would have, like, he hasn't reloaded once. Like,
That's what I would have liked to have seen. Like, okay, take that to the next step, and, like, have him shoot at someone, and the gun starts clicking on an empty chamber, and he's like, "What the fuck's this?" And, Danny has to point out, like, "Yeah, the gun's empty. You have to reload it." Like, okay, it's a simple gag, but then it's like, yeah, it just plays on the idea of, like, he's never had to do this before.
yeah.
But the movie never quite does
The
that,
the
and
payoff for the reloading gun actually happens with Benedict.
that's a good
Yeah.
payoff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
he goes,
did
"No, I
like
just
that.
left one chamber empty." Because Benedict is actually, like, he's almost too good of a villain for this movie. Like,
Yes,
he's
Charles Dance is too good of an actor for
yeah,
this movie, I think.
yeah, and it's just like all the little things, like, that he does. And when we get further in the movie, some of the best lines, like I said, come from him.
Yeah.
Like, but
Well, you
the
get his introduction is like he shoots a target next to, like, some dude who's been, like, held prisoner. Like, I think it's Jack Slater's second cousin or
that
something.
was Art Carney who was
Yeah, and that
playing
was
him.
his
Yeah,
last movie,
yeah, it was
wasn't it? This was
his last performance. Yeah,
yeah.
he dies
Uh,
in his last scene ever. It's kind of
it's
morbid.
poignant, I
Yeah,
suppose. Yeah.
it's morbid and poignant, I guess.
But yeah, like, you get the kind of immediate panning on Benedict, and it's like he's not even looking; he's reading the newspaper while shooting at this
Yeah.
guy. Like, it's just brilliant. He
Sometimes he
looks
likes to.
cool. He's got the white suit, he's got the tattoos down his neck and stuff.
Yeah,
He just
he's
looks
got the
awesome.
glass eye, obviously.
Yeah.
Which I think at that point, I think the first one is a bullseye, if I recall correctly.
Yes, for aiming.
Yeah, and
Um,
uh, the later on they even say, like, sometimes he likes to paint while he's killing people. Like, it's just
yeah.
such a great villain. Like, it's like just like the concepts of, like, a guy who just can basically do whatever while killing people, and it doesn't affect him.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect his ability or his, like, even thought process of doing it.
No, it's
Yeah.
good stuff. And yeah, like, all of that stuff tells, like, Slater that, like, there's going to be some big joining of, like, the drug lords in LA, and so that's, like, the case that he's pursuing. And when Danny shows up, like, it's great because he ends up getting, like, made his partner, which again is,
Yeah.
like, the kind of dumb thing that would happen in, like, a really cliched action movie. But, like, yeah, Danny's trying to point out to Slater, like, yeah, if this was real, they wouldn't make me your partner. Like, you put off to, like, child protective
Yeah,
services or something.
I'd be assigned a social worker.
Yeah.
Which knowing how the 90s worked, it probably wouldn't happen that quickly. But it would have been
Yeah.
I do love in the police station though when he I mean, later on it gets paid off that it's not actually what it seems, but he put the tape recording of the, like, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's like everybody wishes they could do that that's at least one person in their life. There's somebody who they know who just will not shut the fuck up. It's just like, yeah. Later on, the payoff is for that is that it's not actually his ex-wife or whatever, but it's like somebody pays to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all tied into that thing of like he's actually living a pretty sad, lonely, pathetic life behind the scenes, and like you just don't get to see it. And again, there's a lot that they could do with that, but it's like the movie, like it makes that statement about him, but then it doesn't really know where to take it, and it's again, it feels like a missed opportunity for me. Like it's just the writer in me is like, there's so many opportunities you're missing out on with all this stuff that you could really explore with these characters, but it's like they don't do it, and yeah, it feels a lot of the time like the film doesn't quite know what to do with its own premise.
One trope that like we already touched on the Mozart like constant joke that they go with.
Can I just say as well, like fucking as a kid watching this and they're referencing Amadeus, I'm like, I don't know fucking clue what that is.
Yeah,
like, why,
it was a weird one. Yeah,
it's like I get that F. Murray Abraham, that was like one of his big movies, but like god damn, like that was probably a dated reference even in 1993. Like Amadeus, I think, was like early 80s, so it was a long time ago.
I do think what they were going for is that Danny is a real like cinephile, and like I think that's kind of what they were going for, which they had already sort of played that up, but it flies in the face of the Hamlet scene as well, because it's like if he was such a cinephile, he'd probably have an appreciation for Laurence Olivier's version of Hamlet. So it does have a little, contradictoriness to it. But yeah, it definitely that the trope that I do like about that though is that he's playing up that the villains tend to stay villains and heroes tend to stay heroes. It's very like a lot of times they don't cross over. It's actually difficult to do that in your career. Once you've played a few good villains or a few good heroes, it's hard to be taken seriously the other way around. Or in some cases, crossing genres. Like if you're a good comedic actor, it's hard to get out of that.
It was it's so weird as well that they obviously thought this was gold, but it's like the Carnegie Hall joke.
Yeah.
It's like, how'd you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice.
And then later on, practice makes perfect.
It's almost like I'm going to take a really shit gag and I'm just going to play it to like over and over to the point where it somehow becomes awesome just because I'm so committed to it.
One weird thing I noticed, by the way, about the police station, we already mentioned how there's like random people walking around in like dystopian, like armor, like leotards and stuff.
It's like it's from a like high-end fashion show or something, like where it's crazy concept clothing from the early 90s. Like that's what it feels like.
If you look in the background behind the chief or the lieutenant or whatever, he just has like videos of like natural disasters.
I noticed this. It's because he's so angry. It's like volcanoes erupting and
volcanoes, like lightning bombs going off. It's like I didn't really think of it like that, where it's like he's so angry, but I was just like, it was something I never noticed before until this rewatch, and I was like, the hell is that? At first I thought he had like a movie going, and then I was like, no, that went from lightning to a volcano. That was kind of that was a very interesting little thing to do.
There's some bizarre stuff in this movie, and like I say, they had cameos from like Sharon Stone and Robert Patrick just as they go into the police
those
station.
Were all favors that were called in too. They were
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
None of them got paid for that, because if they did that, the budget would have bloated beyond like it would have lost even more money.
Yeah.
Like. I do love when the lost logic of when he's trying to prove to him that it's a movie, and he's like, just take out your gun and shoot me in the head. Like that's what a normal person would do in the real world. Like just, like it was it's like what here, like even if it wasn't a movie, unless you're talking about randomly making like Luke Skywalker kill a bunch of kids, like with bad writing, you're not gonna like, no one's just gonna be like, oh yeah, let's prove that this is fake and just pop a kid in the head with a gun, like. But
he tries to prove to him later where he's like, he writes down a swear word and he's like, say this word, and And Slater's like, I don't want to say it.
Grow up, kid. Like,
Yeah,
to this
exactly.
day, I wonder what it says on that paper. I really do.
Yeah.
Because it can't be like, like fuck, because like even in PG-13 movies, you're allowed to say that like
Yeah,
once.
well, there's one fuck in this film right at the end where
Yeah.
Slater walks back into into the chief's office and he
Yeah.
just says like, the mayor's up my fucking ass or something about
Yeah.
this. And
Well, there's the what is it? The deputy mayor in the first scene when he's like, "This is the deputy mayor," and then he punches him. He's like, "Call me when the real mayor's here," or whatever. Like,
yeah.
or the deputy governor or whatever it was.
Was that Tina Turner as well that was doing that?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is Tina Turner. Like, I
It's
don't know if
so
that was
random.
the video store sequence, by the way, with the thing I noticed is the existence of Acme throughout the whole thing. It's like the
Yeah, I
Acme
saw
video
that.
store. There's like Acme stuff in the background at all times. I
When
just noticed it
they
when I
do
looked up.
like chicken in that alleyway, there's like Acme storage boxes just
Yeah,
stacked up along the side of the alley.
yeah. But the in the video store when they're talking about like the meta level of the attractiveness of the women, how there's no ugly women
Yeah.
in the entire world. It's like, where are the average looking people? It's like, no,
Yeah,
this
and Arnold's just like, it's California.
this is Hollywood. This isn't
But again, that's if it had been done in a slightly more subtle way, that's probably something you could have played into quite effectively, where it's like, yeah, okay, everyone in movies like this always is, ridiculously beautiful because that's just who you cast in
yeah.
action movies, especially in that time period. Not
I
so
mean,
much now.
it still happens for the most part. There's occasionally you'll get someone who's a little bit more homely, but it's
Yeah.
not it's not the standard. Which
Yeah. It
but
does give you that great scene though where you've got like the Terminator 2 poster and it's Stallone's
yes,
face on it. And
this
it
is his
does look
great. This
good
is his
actually.
best movie of all time.
Yeah.
Which the meta level of that whole sequence is just.
I've always wondered as well because like there's how like because practice exists and like he killed Mozart because F. Murray Abraham was in Amadeus, and so because of that, like Jack
Does the
Slater
movie
is
Amadeus exist in the like?
Yeah, well, but because of that, he's never heard of Mozart music, and so is is this world that he lives in some kind of amalgamation of like every movie? So like
That's where it
everything
actually
that's
starts
ever
to lose
happened in
its
a
logic.
film.
It starts to
Yeah,
lose
it's
its
like
logic there, because then any other movie that Stallone would like, then Stallone can't exist really. So it's like it definitely is weird how like they have Basic Instincts references and for other movies, and Terminator. There's literally a Terminator 2 sequence with with the T-1000 walking out,
yeah,
and then but he doesn't notice that he's in that movie. Like, so you've seen the movie, but you work with the T-1000.
yeah.
Like that's where it does lose a little bit of its logic there. I
This
mean,
this is
what
where
little logic it had to begin with.
yeah, and this is my whole issue with like this middle act of the movie when they're actually in like movie world. Um, Everything is so farcical. It's like being in Hot Shots or an airplane movie, where like any ridiculous slapstick nonsense could happen at any moment, and like there's no logic to any of it.
Yeah,
Which is fine, I guess, but like it means you can't really buy into it, and I think it could have been worked better as a smarter, more subtle satire on the action movie genre and all its cliches, where it's like still a relatively grounded world, but it's got all the cliches of films that you can start to point out and poke fun at. But as it stands, yeah, there's just so much just crazy shit like this that's cute. It's like they just did it because they had the opportunity. Like we
yeah,
were saying earlier, Arnold could call in a favor and get Sharon Stone in. Yeah, sure, okay. Just put her in the movie. Who cares if it makes sense? It doesn't matter.
yeah. There's some like there's things that are very grounded, like you said, and then there's sequences where Rottweilers like stack up like cheerleaders, like at the snap of a finger.
Yeah.
So it doesn't the like you said at the very beginning, the tone changes almost like the wind. It like the breeze blows one way and all of a sudden it's serious, and then it goes the other way, which can work if written well, but in some instances it wasn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it any less fun.
There's there's a lot of throwaway stuff that just it does get a chuckle out of me. Like when they're just driving down the freeway and like having a conversation, like Slater and Danny, and like because he's such a shit driver, like there's cars crashing and stuff in the
Yes.
background. Like no one cares, no one notices.
Well, it's like he drives up the wrong side of the exit ramp on his way out of the police station.
Yeah,
He drives at the
yeah.
entrance, and the car that's coming around the corner has to like spin out and like gets like jackknifed basically. And
Yeah, and
it's
he's
like,
like, "God damn you, Slater!"
and it's like, yeah, it definitely that is a consistent theme, is that he's not a good driver, but
Yeah,
because he's the star, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
But and the yeah, that whole sequence is when, well, they do it a couple of times, I believe, where there's people crashing behind him. There's like the one where they're looking for the house, like they're like, oh, it's it's that house, the bad guys are in there. And then it's like
yeah,
later on in the movie when they're like they figured out what's going on, they're headed to the funeral sequence.
yeah,
I think it happens a couple of times.
yeah.
Actually, they use the in the to rewind back real quick. One thing I noticed, I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, but the whole chase sequence with the trucks and El Scorpio and all that, when the one truck launches in the background, he's talking about like, oh yeah, you're gonna have your first divorce and premature ejaculation.
That's this right here.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that
So
one.
it's like the bad guy's trying to do the same stunt that he did, but it goes
And
flying and
and
explodes.
yeah, but the explosion happens before it hits the ground. If you look closely, like the explosion already starts and the truck hasn't even hit.
Yeah,
But yeah, that whole sequence is just like any sequence with him driving is hilarious.
it's it's very much CGI'd.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they go to like his. I guess it's his ex-wife's house. I'm still not entirely clear on why they go there, but like he takes Danny there, and that's when you get to meet
It's
Whitney,
yeah,
which is his daughter.
who's played by Meredith, who's played by Bridget Wilson.
Yeah,
Which I don't
which
understand why they didn't just use her name.
I know. Yeah, like I
Like,
guess she wasn't a big star at the time, so it's like she didn't have name recognition. But like, why wouldn't you?
yeah,
You
it's like
know.
everybody else is using their real names. Like, why not?
And
But yeah,
yeah, like someone pointed out there, she was Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
but only the first Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
She got the hell out of Dodge for the second one.
I think that was a smart move. I
Yeah,
mean, I will say, like, she is smoking hot. Like, she's obviously gorgeous.
She kind of fell off though. Like she was in a few movies, like she did like Billy Madison, Mortal Kombat, this, a couple others, and then like she just sort of disappeared. Like
hmm,
no explanation. Just one day wasn't really around anymore. Wasn't
yeah.
like she got like it wasn't like the standard like, oh, she got aged out of Hollywood. Just like didn't.
I think probably like she refused to sleep with the correct producer, and so like yeah, blacklisted or something. Like bunch of scumbags in Hollywood. That's probably how they run it.
Which is weird. I was actually the scene where she gets introduced. She like kisses Danny randomly because it's like a
That's a
sorority.
weird scene.
It's really weird, and I wonder what kind of legal loopholes they had to jump through to let that be in the movie. Like,
I mean, if that had been reversed, like yeah,
oh yeah, it would have been never flew.
I guess he's meant to be of an age where he's kind of like into girls, but like yeah, he's still just a kid, so he's not really had
Yeah,
the
they don't
chance
ever
or
really
anything.
specifically state. Like, I think he's like, I think he's supposed to be like 14. Like that's my guess. But
I mean, he might be. I assumed he was like 12 or something, but
yeah,
it's
somewhere
kind of hard
between
to
like 12
tell.
and 14, because he's kind of got that look that like you would stay with from like middle school all the way through high school. Like he's got the
He's
like.
got that. I was talking with Gary about this once. Like, he's got that same fucking hairstyle that they gave to every kid in a Hollywood movie, like in the 90s. It's just like shoulder length, like long hair. And I don't know why, because it was never fucking cool to have hair like that.
No, yeah,
Um,
it's like a adolescent mullet.
Yeah, and it's like it
Basically.
was done to every one of them, and it was almost like just a regulation. Like if you're a kid in a movie, you just have to have hair like that. And I don't know if it was tried to make them look younger than they were or something.
It
Just
might have
weird.
also been that that's just the easiest kind of hair to maintain. Like you don't have to
Maybe.
like, yeah, it just falls into place, so you don't got to worry about like if they look exactly the same. Because especially like a lot of with a lot of reshoots in movies, it's like it's hard to make kids look exactly the same if they come back a year later. I know that
Yeah.
Terminator had that problem. If you look at Terminator 2 as it goes along, there's scenes where Edward Furlong looks significantly he's a year older, but he like looks significantly older and taller than
Yeah.
scenes that are later in the movie. So it might just be like that they try to keep it consistent.
Bowl
Well,
cut crossed with a mullet. I think that's probably the best description.
A bullet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely he's somewhere he's like a like late middle school, early like freshman year of high school. I would say like probably like 8th grade.
But it is, yeah. When I look back on it now, it's slightly weird that like this girl who's clearly in her early 20s is kissing him like full on the lips.
And even
Like,
when they show the
that's
guy
creepy doing
later
that.
who she was supposed to do it, he doesn't look any like older than Danny. Like he
The
like maybe
whole
looks like a year older.
the whole thing was weird because like it's not explained until later what the hell it is, and it's like okay, it's like a fraternity thing at college where like they
Yeah.
have to the
Yeah,
pledges have to be,
sorority pledge thing. Yeah.
yeah. I
But
the
it's
payoff is just so that you can get the kid who gets like all the guns pointed at him later, but oh
yeah.
god, it's like such a labored gag for what it is.
And this is another sequence that it kind of goes right where back to what you were saying. It goes from being slapsticky, funny to it gets real dark real fast. It goes back to his son slash her brother dying and like him being really somber and going out because he's like, you wouldn't happen to have a cigar,
Yeah.
and like it goes from oh yeah, I wasn't supposed to like kiss you, grab her and throw her on her shoulder, like all that stuff, and then all of a sudden now you go from that to what I just said, and then Benedict showing up and like his men like beating the shit out of her.
Yeah.
It's like it gets
Yeah, it
real.
is like, but then you get like, they actually do this quite well where they turn the tables and like she gets taken off into the bedroom or something.
Yeah.
And, she's screaming so she can maintain the idea that she's getting like attacked, but then she beats the shit out of the guy. And it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I like
There's
that.
a nice little bit of continuity there because in the first sequence from Jack Slater 3, he has the whole like, hey, you want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres, and then
Yeah.
she does the same thing to the guy who's like got her captive.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't say the line, but she does the exact same like crotch kick over her
Yeah.
like. So there's like a bit of continuity to that. I don't know if it was on purpose. It was probably by accident, but
She like learned it from her old man.
yeah.
Yeah. Again, more weird stuff where they've got like the running gag of the guy who can't catch things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He
Don't know why
drops
it's
the
there.
money. He drops the gun.
Yeah.
He tells him not to grab the gun. Like there's a limited amount of time to answer the door.
Yeah.
Also, like she like I guess I'll call her Meredith. She has 3 names we can go by, but she like snaps the dude's neck like it's not like she's like ripping a piece of paper. Like she's got like no muscle mass, and it's just like she's just like crack. Yep, broken
Yeah.
neck.
That was
Which
definitely a hallmark of 90s movies.
yeah, that's a buddy of mine actually. It's actually like almost impossible to break a person's neck just by like spinning their head because your neck muscles are too strong. So like
Yeah.
we used to have a run. He had a neck that would really crack like real loud if you spun it. So like we used to have a thing where I would like take his head and go and like crack his neck, and he would just go limp, and people thought I killed him. And then they'd be like, "What was that?" And he'd just pop up and be like, "I'm fine." Like,
yeah. I do like the whole action sequence once Jack arrives because there's like the guy blasting away with a shotgun and blowing out the wall and stuff, and then Jack just kind of pops up and like beats the shit out of everyone. And it all ends with Benedict like leaving his eye behind, so it blows up.
Which I can't quite figure out to this day because when he gets back to like the house or whatever, he has the same eye. I don't like
it's yeah.
Like they say specifically he was missing the eye when he ran away, but then he takes
never
it out.
Yeah, you never see him with an actual like missing eye, if you know what I mean. Like he doesn't have like an empty eye socket or anything.
No, even when he takes it out later in the thing, he has a regular eye. He has his eye.
Yeah, so is it like a thing he wears on top of his eye or something?
I'm guessing it's like a big,
really...
but no, but that doesn't make any sense because it's a sphere. They show him put it in the
Yeah.
box and they show them click it. So that was just a weird like thing that I don't think they thought through very well. It's a cool gimmick for like because it's like a James Bond gimmick for a guy, like oh he's got a glass eye that he uses for different various things, aiming. There's a bomb version, But they didn't really think about the scene of like, oh yeah, he was running away and his eye was missing. But then he gets the next scene they cut to, and his eye, or the scene right before it, it was like his eye wasn't missing. So I don't know if that was just a disjointed sequence that they didn't really think about.
I think they genuinely just didn't have a way of shooting him with the missing eye. You know, they didn't have CGI to, you know, have an empty eye socket at that point. And
I know back then what they used to use was, if the best they could do was they had like the whole eyeball contact lens, and they would have it like kind of look like the flesh tone of like behind your eye.
I would not want to wear that shit.
Oh no.
I just love after this though, like Slater's house is blown up, and like I guess him and Danny survived it somehow, but like they're covered in like soot and like they're smoking still from it, and the police chief is yelling at them.
Yeah.
Like this is all their fault.
There's actually, I wrote down exactly what the police chief says. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
It's not even English. It's just like gibberish.
But there is a scene. There's a sequence in there where he actually does say something, and this is word for word what he says. I got the California Raisins doing an all-male version of the Diary of Anne Frank. What? Like, what
I don't even know how to
mean?
interpret that.
It's like the rest of it is like, like it's like gibberish, but in the middle there's a sequence. Because like I heard like something, and I was like, did he say Anne Frank? And I rewound it, and I put on the closed captions, and I was like, that's literally what he just said. Like he said, I will say it one more time for anybody who did not hear me. I got the California Raisins doing an all-male version of the Diary of Anne Frank. It makes less sense the second time you hear it.
I just like I love that the smoke's coming out of his ears as well, like as he's doing it.
Yeah, and like the consistent his windows are always blown out. Like they're always like
he keeps shouting.
And if you look, all the cops that walk by are all the ones that were in the like pairing off scene, the rabbi, so it's got a little bit of, you know, like they try to keep it consistent at least.
Yeah. But the whole premise is like Jack Slater gets fired from his job for some reason, just because he's like, I guess, causing damage to the city.
Yeah.
And that's when Benedict discovers the, the ticket, because he took Danny's wallet while he was in the house, like, you know, took him prisoner and stuff. And like he got his wallet so he knew who he was. And like the ticket was in there. And that's when he discovers that he can, you know, put his hand through the walls and all that stuff and like go into different realms.
I actually love that sequence because they have the whole the Twilight Zone theme playing in the background.
Yeah,
and I love the Twilight Zone.
Very appropriate.
I was always a huge fan of the Twilight Zone. Like every year they would do the like marathon on Sci-Fi Channel for New Year's Eve. It would be from like midnight until like 12 noon the next day, and I would watch it as much as I would stay up for like 6-7 hours and try to watch as many as I could. It was
the Twilight Zone was fantastic back in the day.
Yeah, the real version, not the remake.
Yeah, no, the original was great, the Rod Serling one.
Yeah,
but like it kind of leads into like the funeral scene. And one thing I'll say about that, like as goofy and ridiculous as the Leo Lafart stuff is, the actual bits with the helicopter where like the miniguns like blasted through the building and like it's coming out the other side and stuff, like that is great. Like that stuff is actually really well done.
That was you could tell that there was McTiernan had like some say in what was going on with that. It was very
hold on, I'll see if I can fix this.
I almost brought in my sunglasses too, but
there you go.
They're out in my car. I'm not going out there.
It's the only pair of sunglasses I can find.
I don't have anything. I got nothing. I got a slinky. That's about it.
Yeah, you can't wear that.
But what was I saying? Oh yeah, you could tell there was like a lot of staples of like McTiernan style in that whole sequence.
Yeah, this is the thing that I find frustrating about this film. When McTiernan's allowed to do like non-goofy, non-comedy action sequences, he's really fucking good. Like you get to see what he's capable of as a director. Like you obviously saw it in Die Hard and you know, Predator and stuff like that, but like he replicates it here and it's great. It's just like I feel like a lot of the time he's working within a lot of constraints that he just couldn't get around and like that's why so much of it is in the movie land, at least, is just kind of garbage. But yeah, like that whole sequence, I love. I love when he brings the crane out over the the tar pit and drops the bomb in, and like it just kind of turns into a big like fucking
Yeah,
bubble thing.
the La Brea tar pits when he just turns it into
Yeah,
a big
but
fart
then
bubble.
he climbs out of the pit covered in tar, and he just gets like some paper towels and just wipes his
Yeah.
face off, and it's perfectly clean.
Yeah, tar sticks to most people.
Yeah,
Like, that's a great line. It's like,
and then
yeah.
like Meredith shows up in a monster truck, and she's
I
just like, "Oh
I thought
yeah,
you might need some fresh clothes.
yeah."
Like thank you. Like,
It's like nobody thinks this is a little bit convenient. Like, nah, it's fine.
nah, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, in that whole helicopter sequence, I love the like because they make not there's like obviously the big references, the T-1000, Basic Instincts. We've talked about those, but there's also like some subtle references too. Like the red X going like right over his head is like a reference to Predator. Like
Yeah.
later on when he punches through the car window and it's like it hurts his hand, and it's a reference to the first Terminator.
Yeah.
Of how like they're like talking about how could he possibly do that? It would shatter his hand, So there's like subtle references too, which are fun, you know. And I think that's where it like kind of excels, is knowing what big references to do and then what subtle ones to do.
That's where I sit with this. Is like the subtle stuff is great, and like I'd love more of that, because like I say, there's so many tropes and cliches and stuff with movies like this that you could poke fun at, but it's like it takes the most basic ones and covers them, and then it just so much of the screen time is given over to just really ridiculous slapstick comedy stuff, like the Leo Lafart funeral scene, all that sort of thing. And it just feels like they could have done a much smarter take on it, which would have been great. And it's like they had this idea for like a really clever pastiche and a satire on action movies, and then they thought like, no, but we have to dumb it down and make it fun for like the whole family. And that's why you
that
get
was one
so
thing
much of this stuff.
that they did, was the original version was not geared towards like family fun. It was definitely more geared toward, like you were saying, it was much more dark and grounded. And then they brought in like in my research, there had to be at least 4 different people they brought in for rewrites. So
Right.
it's like after a while you start to really lose your focus. It's like if you have somebody if you have 5 people in a row rewrite the same story, it's going to end up very different by the end. It's the game of telephone.
That as a writer, that just terrifies me. This idea of like so many different people like having a pass at this original story, like you're not going to get anything remotely consistent or focused or anything. It's just going to be each person's telling their own story and trying to put their own spin on it, and what you end up with is just this designed by committee mess. But yeah, all of that's.
Oh, go on.
Sorry.
No,
I was just going to say, like, it all kind of leads into like they go to Vivaldi's house and beat the shit out of Benedict, and like Slater basically throws him through a wall and he just disappears through it. Like the portal opens and he's in like the real world.
That was for blowing up my cousin, second favorite cousin's house, and this is for blowing up my ex-wife's house.
He just slaps his hand.
His daughter's black eye and throws him. Usually there's a hole when I throw them like that. It's like that actually, by that point, like there is a subtlety to the fact that Benedict kind of figures out that he's in a movie. Like he starts talking, he starts like breaking the fourth wall and stuff.
That is a weird scene, that like, because it's great performance and stuff, but yeah, like it's the only time in the movie when someone breaks the fourth wall, and yeah, it's him. Just
because I think he's figured out what's going on, because he's like written to be way more intelligent than like anybody else. So like, regardless of how smart Charles Dance would be in the real world, he's written to be like basically a genius. So he's figured out the situation, and by breaking the fourth wall, it's like, oh, he's aware of.
Someone was asking me what I was drinking, so yeah, there we go.
Tequila.
You've not been drinking nearly enough on this stream, my friend.
I you know what? I will do that now. First shot of tequila.
But yeah, you're exactly right. yeah, out of all the characters, like Benedict would absolutely be the one to figure this out. And yeah, it's a funny scene where he's like, if God was a villain, he'd be
It'd
me.
be me.
And then he just shoots Vivaldi, you know?
Yeah, and it's like the 7th or 8th like time he's like, he finally just gets fed up with the screwing up of all the references.
Well, he can't do sayings, can he? Like, he
Yeah,
always
it's like
fucks
he
them
has
up.
it's like, I don't want to, at one point he's like, I don't want to be a 4th wheel. It's like it's a 5th wheel. Like,
Yeah.
but the
And
one
then
that
he says,
finally,
like, you pull a 360 on me. He's
a
like, no, it's a
180,
180, you fucking idiot. Like,
you stupid spaghetti slurper. If I did a
yeah.
360, I'd end up right back where I started.
And then he just goes like, yeah, trust me. Shoots him.
Yeah.
I love Benedict's gun as well in this.
Yeah,
I
I'm
have
not really
no
sure
clue what it
exactly
is,
what
but
it is. Let me see if I can if I can find out. Let's see.
it looks like just a long-barreled Magnum or something.
Yeah, it definitely is some sort of Magnum. Let's see. It is yeah, it's just a 44 Magnum with like a custom slide, basically. When you actually see it like this, it doesn't have it looks a lot different when you see it from the side.
Yeah. But it's got like it seems to have like some kind of flared handle at the bottom, like because it kind of the grip seems a lot bigger than it should be. The barrel's a
I'll
lot
catch
longer.
up.
Yeah. And it's even got like extended sights and stuff on the top, so all of it makes it look a lot chunkier and bigger and just like more awesome. But yeah, it's a cool gun no matter what. 44 Magnum. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
I
actually
do
right
like
at the
it.
scene where he's like my stream just got to the scene where he shoots him in the pool.
Yeah, there's a lot of like times when he shoots people, but you don't see the actual results of it. Like same when he kills that gas station guy.
Yes, that's my favorite scene in the whole movie. By far. Like that's by far my favorite sequence.
I was going to talk about that actually because the bit where Benedict's in New York, like it looks like an absolute crime-ridden shithole. I mean,
well, it was
art imitating life, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, New York in the early '90s was very like that. So
yeah. And yeah, you see someone get killed for their shoes, and there's no police sirens, nothing. And so he's like, "Yeah, cool, I'm going to test this little theory." And he's just like walks up to some mechanic guy. He's like, "Yeah, well, excuse me,
I want to test a theory." Bam,
yeah.
and he like looks at his watch, like waiting for like the police sirens, because in the movie it would have happened immediately.
Yeah,
like, excuse me, I've just shot a man and I did it on purpose.
Yeah, I've just killed a man and I want to confess. And you just hear some asshole
down there.
Shut up down there.
Which is probably what would happen in real life in like a slummy part of New York. Like they'd be like, "We don't care. I have work in the morning."
When we were talking about tone as well, like there's a bit where he's just walking down the street and some like junky woman comes up to him and that's a prostitute, and she's like, "Yeah, you want to have a party?" And like he just looks at her like, "How old are you?" Like.
Yeah, like he's disgusted by it. Well, I think it plays into the thing I said earlier where they talk about how there's no unattractive women.
Yeah.
And to him, it's like she's like clearly, disheveled. So it's.
But this, for a movie that I guess was meant to be for families and stuff, like now you've got like, drug addicted prostitutes like propositioning the villain of the film. It's like.
I guess that's one thing that like if you might be able to like hand wave that away if you're a parent, be like, "Oh yeah, she's just kind of drunk." Like, like you might be able to like
maybe, yeah.
It's one of those things that. But I think if I recall, so I wrote it down. I'm just gonna say it because there was one line where Danny says, "You can't go through life nitpicking every little thing," and all I could think when I heard that was I think Mahler would disagree.
Yeah, he probably would.
He'd probably be like, I take that challenge.
It's like somewhere, somehow, the long man stirs,
basically. But that the tone severely changes as soon as they come into the real world, though. Like almost all, except for that sequence, and I think I would say when he goes and meets the mother are really the only like comedic scenes.
And even they're not comedic. Well, I mean, they're lighter, but like they're more realistic than anything you got in the movie world, which is fine. And this again, like it goes back to what I said before, where this third act of the movie, when they're in the real world, is probably my favorite part of it, because this is where you get the deconstruction of like all this, the action hero ideas. Where shooting a car will just cause it to instantly explode, or you can punch through windows with no problem, or you can play chicken and win. All that stuff gets like taken apart in this, and like all that is really good. It's just such a jarring change from like what you
It
saw
kind of
with
becomes more of like a slightly older Arnold movie where there is those lines, those like quips, but they're in the context. So like when they play chicken and the cars hit, and he comes out and he's like, "Shit, that hurt!" Like it's played off comedic, but it's like done in a decent way. And like like go make sure they're dead. Like look at them, they're dead. Like the guy's laying on the hood with his blood and brains all over the
and he
place.
references Die Hard as
Yes,
well.
yeah. And then he says, "Well, watch my back. I think he has a windshield wiper." Like like that's like a comedic moment that, in the context of the scene, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a like Chrysler or whatever car he's driving, or Cadillac.
Yeah, like he knows. Yeah, he demonstrates a bit of knowledge where it's like, okay, I know that my car's got airbags and that one doesn't. So like, even if I played chicken and lost, like it doesn't matter. Like I'll be fine. So that I guess there's some kind of justification there, which is all right. But yeah, like that stuff is all fine. Like, yeah, it shows how playing chicken in real life just wouldn't work,
Yeah.
But
yeah, that whole like, so like there are comedic lighter moments, but it doesn't detract from the tonal shift, the heaviness of the fact that he's in the process of realizing he doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, well, this is him starting to experience like the wider world, I suppose. Like, okay, how do you exist outside of like shooting bad guys and like saving the day and all that sort of thing? And like, he goes to Danny's apartment and he ends up like, Danny just passes out, I guess, because he's exhausted from everything he's been through. And like Slater's just been talking with his mom all evening.
Yeah.
And he's like, he even says like, I never just talked to him before. Yeah. It's neat.
It's neat. And he's like, neat?
Never had to do it before.
Yeah. You turned him into a wimp. And the mother says like the creepiest thing about, like, she's like, I don't think I did. Like,
yeah.
Like, what was that about? That was random.
Yeah.
But yeah, then like she has like classical music. She has Mozart playing, which
he's never heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's never heard it because he's only ever heard action music, like AC/DC. Which actually, that was something I meant to say before. I loved how like when they're in the movie world, the soundtrack is like on his tape deck. Like he just like puts it changes the music for the whole thing. Which they actually recorded the song "Big Gun" specifically for this movie. Like,
oh really?
That was another like favor that was called in. Yeah, it was like the song was exclusive for it originally, and then eventually it ended up on their like album. But yeah, the whole like it's like what does he say? It's like, who is this? Mozart, like the guy Practice killed.
Yeah. God, that fucking joke, honestly. Like, maybe I'm just an uncouth moron from Scotland, but like when I was a kid, I had no fucking clue what any of that was referencing. And so like, yeah, it wasn't until I was older I was like, oh yeah, it's Amadeus, and okay.
No, it definitely was a dated reference. And being, like if you're in the demographic of like early preteens to teens, you wouldn't have seen Amadeus. Like, that's not a movie you would have watched. That's like,
it's not really a cool movie that like general audiences would have been totally up on. But yeah, I mean, it's all of this stuff like kind of ties into this idea of like the superhero or the action hero tropes don't work in the real world. And so I really like the scene where Jack's just kind of like walking like through New York, and like he's convinced that Benedict's going to use the ticket to get into the movies and like recruit other villains to his cause. And so he's trying to go around every movie theater just looking for him. And Danny's trying to point out, like, look, we're in New York. There's millions of people that live here. There's thousands of movie theaters. How the hell do you expect to find this guy? And Slater's just like, well, normally when I'm doing stuff, like they just leave clues or like they
Yeah,
just show up and we
they just
find
show
them.
up. Yeah.
And Danny says to him, like, well, this isn't the movies now. You're just here. You're just and Slater says to him, like, just what? And he doesn't say anything to that. And it's clearly like he's trying to imply, you're just a normal person here. You're not
Yeah.
special. You're not a hero anymore. And he just kind of walks away. And I thought that was a really poignant scene. I thought it was really cool. It was well played. I think even Arnold did a good performance in that moment. And
Yeah,
I
Arnold
like
actually
that.
does a really like he actually acts up pretty well at scenes in this. Like it's not like, and this was before he kind of had acting chops underneath him. Like he still was. I mean, he had been an action star, like you said, up to this point. He didn't have to act much. He just had to be big and blow things up. Like, but there are
Yeah.
moments where like he genuinely shows emotion and you feel it. So
Yeah. No, I thought it was good. And it's a nice idea to play upon because on the one hand, Jack Slater is like the father figure that Danny desperately wants, but on the other hand, he knows that he's not a hero in this world. He only exists within his own like bubble of like the movies, the movie world, where that's where he can be a hero. And here he's just a regular guy who can be killed, he can be hurt, he can make mistakes, and like the stuff that he would normally do doesn't work here. So it's an interesting like juxtaposition, I guess, of those two characters and like their relative experience and their knowledge.
I do love how like when he kind of realizes like, yeah, I'm not in the movie, and he pulls the cabbie out and he's like, the movies where they say like, I forgot the exact lines he says, but he's like, and he's just like, well, how about this, rubber baby buggy bumpers? And like, you weren't expecting me to say that, were you? And like the cabbie's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because like, you gotta remember, like to him, Arnold Schwarzenegger just pulled him out of his cab and said the most random thing possible.
I did wonder how he was able to like move freely around New York City when clearly he looks exactly like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like,
yeah,
surely people would recognize him.
That doesn't really come into play until he runs out of the theater later. Like when he runs out and like
the script says it's time for it to matter.
Yeah. The whole like, I actually love the whole like theater sequence. I think that's really well done.
That stuff is really good, and like this is where the movie really comes into its own finally, because they as it happens they're talking about how you can't just wander around and expect to find the guy you're looking for, and then they wander around and find the guy they're looking for. They find Benedict, and they figure out that he's going to be going to the premiere of Jack Slater 4, and he's going to kill Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that'll, I guess, kill Jack Slater somehow.
Yeah, it's a little weird because like the movie already exists of Jack Slater 4, so like whatever would have normally happened to Benedict at the end of that movie is on every print except for the one that I guess Nick has. I don't know if it's like rewriting the history of that movie.
It's like it exists in its own kind of pocket universe, I guess, where it doesn't influence anything else. But I this is one thing I'll give the movie credit for, and I'll probably give Arnold credit for as well. He is definitely not above mocking himself and having.
Oh no, yeah, he never has been. Actually, he's always loved to mock himself.
I think that's good because, like, when you see the real Arnold in this, he's like some kind of shallow media hound who's just kind of bossed around by his wife, and he's like he's only interested in promoting like the Planet Hollywood.
Planet Hollywood and the gyms, whatever, Gold's Gym, I think was the one he was involved with. And I love that because it's like, in hindsight now, it's like, yeah, you could see this marriage wasn't going to go very far. You could see this wasn't going to end up very well at the end. Like the powers of hindsight,
But I think that's fine. Like, I love how his real life persona is just like kind of an asshole, And,
he's definitely taking the piss out of himself.
And I appreciate that. Like, a slight element of humility, and like the fact that Jack Slater meets him eventually, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't really like you. You've brought me nothing but pain."
Yeah, and he's like following him. He's like, "You're the best lookalike I've ever seen. Like, we can get you at like mall openings and like, I
I
love
have to
the
I have to give credit as well to Tom Noonan as the Ripper. I think he's so fucking cool. Like he
yes,
looks
yeah.
terrifying. He's got a really nice, unique look about him. The
He looks
axe
like a
is incredible.
legitimate like psychopath. Like he really looks like everything about that character. He's only on screen for like maybe 3 minutes of the whole movie. Like he's not really on screen for that long,
Yeah,
and like he's one of the most memorable characters of the movie.
yeah,
He just owns the role, and I love when he's putting together his axe. Like the like
yes, yeah. I
it
love the axe.
it reminds me of the sequence in Highlander when the Kurgan is putting together his sword and he's
Yeah,
like, you know, like that like whole. I've always had like a soft spot for like like weapon assembly sequences.
everyone loves that. This
Yeah.
is I pointed this out on Twitter like weeks ago, where it's like that scene from Commando where he gears up for
Hmm.
the big battle, and it's like he's just fucking loading guns and like putting
Yeah.
grenades into his belt and lacing up his boots and all that stuff. It's great. It's just like gun porn. It's like
Well, it's also like the scene
stuff
in
that you just
Aliens when Ripley's putting like slapping the pulse rifle and the flamethrower together and taping it up and all that stuff. Like it's just those sequences just get you going. Like they just get your adrenaline pumping. It's like, yeah, let's go do something. Let's run through a wall. You know,
yeah. No, it's awesome stuff. Someone asked as well. It was Tom Noonan Kane in RoboCop 2. I believe
he
he
was.
was. Yeah.
He was. Yeah.
And he was really fucking good in that role as well.
The
That
the
was
uh the crack addicted robot. Yeah.
yeah,
That
yeah,
the sequence, I mean, just I know that that's obviously a different movie, but the sequence when they have him like seeing himself like being like the skull is removed and they're like talking and holding it and like
yeah.
that like the terror of like seeing yourself disassembled like that would be insanity.
Well, remember the bit as well where they got a guy strapped to like a hospital gurney and like they cut him open basically.
Yes. Yeah.
And the doctor even says like, oh, maybe you want to have the kid leave, and like
Yeah.
he's just like, why? It's like, oh, okay.
My
He just
my
starts doing.
favorite sequence in RoboCop 2, and it's not like it itself isn't a good movie. Like there's like a couple of scenes here and there that are good. Like it is the failed robots, the failed attempts at
Yeah,
RoboCop, and like the one opens up and it's the skull and he just pulls out the gun and just like
yeah. Like there's another one where it like shoots one of the scientists, and
yes,
like
yeah,
then you see the guy like in the present day, and he's like his arms all like in a sling, and you
yeah.
just see him go like, oh,
The other one, like
like he
yeah,
remembers.
it's like there's like a whole. I think one doesn't like one of them like twisted in such a way that it, like breaks its own back or something like that, or it might be something else.
I think
But
that's
yeah,
Iron Man 2 that you're
that's
thinking
Iron Man
of
2.
there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry. I'm combining a
Um,
few movies now. But
yeah,
yeah, definitely my favorite is the one just being like, ugh,
yeah.
which
Oh,
I
it's
should.
good.
It's not. It's funny, but like it kind of like Last Action Hero. It's a funny sequence that you really should probably be taking pretty seriously. It's like
Yeah.
this thing's in horrible pain to the point where it just wants to end it.
Well, with this, I like how the Ripper, and it's a great sequence as well, where Danny's able to spot the Ripper going into the balcony above like the real Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you get this great panning shot of like him stood there with the axe, just ready to throw it. And then Arnold like leaps up to shoot him, and he gets tackled
Well,
by like
yeah,
the real Arnold.
Slater leaps up to shoot, and Arnold tackles him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
it's
then
hard. You
like
have to like differentiate between the
I know
two.
it's like yeah, I'm losing track of who's Arnold and who's not. And then like Ripper just like goes down the curtain, like he just throws the axe into it and just slides down it. Like
Yeah,
it's a
that's
really cool
awesome.
sequence. It looks good.
And it's the way that it's filmed, like the far pan shots are just great. It reminds me of a lot of things that they did in like Predator, the far panning of like things.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
which it's always great when you can identify a director's like footprint, not footprint, fingerprints on
mm,
something, and it comes through like sometimes in this movie. Unfortunately, not enough. I think if McTiernan was given enough chance to like just kind of let go, I think there could have been even better sequences like that. The few that
mm,
they're like the helicopter and this one, you could just see it.
mm, no. But it does all culminate in like that big rooftop confrontation,
Yes.
which is good. Again, it's like set up and payoff. It's a direct copy of like the scene from Jack Slater 3, where it's on the roof. He's got another kid hostage. Jack comes in, kicks the door down. I love how he looks down, and like before it was like a sea of cop cars. Now it's just like media
Nothingness.
people and
Yeah.
journalists. Yeah. Again, it's like this idea of like trying to replicate the movie grandeur in the real world, where it's like it's not
Yeah,
going to
it's
work
not
now.
like in the movie version, it's like everything is about what they're doing on the roof, whereas here they don't even notice. They don't even know that's going on. So
Yeah,
it's like literally like not to everyone on the ground, it's nothing.
yeah.
So
And
there's no like you said, grandiose. There's no what's the word I'm looking for? Not honor. Fame to be given for this. Like it's literally just somebody being
the
held
world is
hostage.
indifferent. Yeah, the
Yeah.
world is kind of indifferent to what's going on there. But yeah, he ends up electrocuting the Ripper, which is
Mhm.
great. And I love how he uses Arnold's line, like, "I'll be back."
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
like hell
bet
you
you
will.
will. All right, like hell you will. What's the Austin O'Brien, the Danny? He actually passed out during this scene. Like the harness that they used was too tight, and like
Oh shit.
basically like he passed out like for part of the sequence.
I feel like because I don't know what he did after this movie, but I feel like he probably got a lot of shit because this film was a bit of a bomb, and it probably didn't help him much in his
Yeah, I
career.
don't recall him being in anything actually
I,
after this.
I think it's a bit of a shame because I don't think he's a bad actor. Like I think he does okay in this, particularly towards the ends where there's like bigger emotional scenes going on. I think he's all right. He's okay in this film.
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
look up like anything else he was in. I can't recall ever seeing him again.
yeah, I've never seen. I don't remember seeing him in anything after this. I guess he was just one of those child actors that, like, if your name's attached to a bit of a stinker, like nobody's going to want to hire you.
Some child actors just don't pursue it either. They get the royalties, they get whatever, and that's good enough for them, you know.
Well, I think the classic example was Newt from Aliens. Well,
Yeah,
Aliens, I guess.
she just does
Never did anything before or after. Like
she just
that was
does
the
the
one
convention
movie.
scene. She literally
Yeah,
just shows up at like Monster Mania cons and stuff, and
you got to
she's at
respect
those
it. Like,
all the time.
yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, that works. I mean, if you don't want to pursue it, but you can still make money off of it, hey, I'm not going to knock you for it.
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
But yeah, that's when Benedict shows up and guns down like Slater, which
Yeah,
you referenced earlier, where it's like you know and what I'll give this scene credit for as well, it's a 6-shooter gun. Obviously, it's a revolver, and they actually they account for all 6 chambers in it because he fires 4 shots, and then there's like an empty, and
yeah.
Slater's like, "Oh, you made a movie mistake. You forgot to reload the damn gun." And he
No,
just says like,
I
"Nah, I
just
just
left
left the
one
chamber."
chamber empty.
And it's great. Like
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing that would happen in the real world,
I
And
love how he's like running down the like characters or like I think he even says Adolf Hitler. Like he's like,
yeah,
I could go get Adolf Hitler out of a movie and like like
this is one of the things I wanted to say to you. When it comes to missed opportunities with this film, you've essentially got the opportunity to bring in any character from any film ever. I mean, I know
yeah.
for licensing issues, you obviously can't,
Yeah,
but
you have to really stick to like things that are like public domain almost.
yeah, but imagine if you could bring in like the Terminator or the Predator or something like that, like to
Yeah.
to face off against Jack Slater. Like how fucking awesome would that be?
I
Um,
mean, that would be really interesting if they brought the Predator in. Like that would be like cuz first of all, that would be like it would be really strange for the Predator because he'd be like,
yeah, like why am I
wasn't I
here?
just
Yeah.
fighting you?" like like why do you look slightly different?
But yeah, imagine if you could like he references Hannibal Lecter, like, well, that
Yeah.
was only a couple of years after Silence of the Lambs. So imagine Anthony Hopkins comes in, or I'm sure he wouldn't have done a film like this. But again, it's just like incredible opportunities and possibilities that they could have done. Now you could probably just recreate it with CGI and you could deep fake them into it.
I do feel like as long as the movie the production company had the rights, they could have used whoever like anything they wanted from their own rights. Rights were also a little different back then. Like you could get away with a lot more in the 90s.
Yeah.
It wasn't people like except for a few of the production companies, they weren't being as militant about their copyrights back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like the 20 aughts that they really started getting into like, oh, we don't reference anything that like we'll sue the crap out of you if you reference anything that we did.
Yeah. Ah, such a shame. Because yeah, it just comes across as a little bit bland and self-contained. It's like they're only interested in the Jack Slater kind of universe, and like there's nothing beyond that really. And of all the things, fucking death from the Seventh Seal, like
Yeah,
an obscure like fucking Norwegian art house movie from like the 60s that no one would have
it's
heard of
probably
before.
like I said, it's probably public domain, so they could probably just get away with it.
That was probably it, yeah.
Yeah.
And a great like Ian McKellen, fantastic, but yeah, like um such a strange movie. Out of all the things you could have picked, that was it. You know, like okay.
It's funny because they actually do sort of leave. I mean, obviously there was never a sequel to this movie, but they do sort of leave open the possibility of a sequel because no one ever goes and claims the ticket from the front
Yeah,
of the Seventh Seal theater. It's
yeah.
just still chilling there. Like anybody who was watching that movie could have, or I guess they all run out in terror, so they wouldn't
You
have.
would
I
if
would,
like literally the Grim Reaper was coming after you, and you're
yeah.
like, I'm
But
gonna get
anybody
away from this.
walking down the street could have picked it up and been like, "Oh, it's like golden ticket kind of looking thing." Like me, you know. Like
I
they,
do love the death of Benedict though, like when he's Jack Slater shoots him in the eye, and he's like,
yes,
"No sequel for you."
no
That's
sequel
pretty
for
good.
you.
And
Yeah.
again, the movie accounts for the ammunition that he's got left because he puts 2 bullets into the gun, and so Jack Slater fires one of them to kill Benedict, and so there's 1 round left in it. That's all
Yeah.
there is. And so he's still got that gun when he's in the ambulance, so that he can threaten the medical technicians.
Yes.
Because again, gunshot wounds work differently in the real world, where it's like you get shot in the chest, it's probably going to kill you,
Yeah.
especially with a 44 Magnum.
It even say like we have to get him to where this is only a flesh wound, and they're like the paramedics look at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like this would never just be a flesh wound.
Yeah.
And he just drives the ambulance into the theater. I guess it doesn't matter. It's going to be demolished like a week later anyway.
No,
So
I like that
yeah.
aspect of it. Like just ram raiding his way into the place, like wheels him down on the hospital gurney, and he's like he doesn't have the ticket, so he's just hoping against hope that somehow this will work, so we can get him back into the movies, and that's when death shows up. And again, another great scene in the film that I really liked is
Yeah.
the Grim Reaper himself is approaching Jack Slater, like presumably to claim him, and Danny just leaps in with the gun, pointing at him like you're threatening death. Like
Yeah.
I don't think a gun's gonna do anything to him, but
But it's like
you know,
even then, it's like he even says something along the lines of like, "Oh no, I'm not here to claim him." And it's like me. It's like, "Nah, you die a grandfather." It's like, why the hell did you even show up then? Like,
yeah,
what were
he's
you
like he's
drawn
just
to?
curious.
Yeah, which I
Yeah,
guess is fine. But if we rewind real quick, I love when they first come out of the movie and he looks up and he sees the projection of the truck and he's like, "Oh, we're still here." Like
yeah,
it's that was one thing I thought was funny that he was just like, "Oh,
that
no,
was
we're still
pretty
in this."
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
yeah,
yeah,
like death gives him the bit of advice. It's like you can look for the other half of the ticket. I'm like,
it's like
okay,
stop
I don't
being
know
an
how he
idiot.
knew what had happened up until this point, but he somehow did.
Well,
Um,
I guess if he's supposed to be the actual death, he would have like extra like like what's the word, like extra dimensional knowledge.
Probably, yeah, yeah. And he says here it's like he's not on my list because
Yeah.
obviously a fictional character can't really die in the normal sense.
Not only that, they're not even from the same fictional universes.
Yeah,
So like, how could he possibly be on his list?
I do like how he's just walking down the street and he touches some guy who just starts
Yes, he
coughing
touches the
immediately.
cop, and the guy
Yeah.
just starts dying.
But yeah, it's it works fine. It gives Danny the motivation to find that second part of the ticket, and that's what opens the magical portal back into the movie realm. And so he says goodbye to Jack, and I liked it. I think it's a pretty well acted scene, and you get just a little hint of what Danny is all about as a character. Like he wants a father figure in his life. He never says it out loud, but you get the impression that like he just wants someone to look up to. He wants a hero. He wants someone to inspire him. Um, and Jack's parting lines is like, "Well, I'm always going to be here for you."
Yeah, you just gotta coming to the movies.
And I think that's a perfectly fine interpretation of what movies are and what movie heroes are to so many people. You know, they're ageless. They're always there whenever you want to look at them or look up to them or whatever. They're there to inspire you, and they don't have the kind of flaws and shortcomings of real humans. Not a bad message, I suppose.
There's also a payoff from earlier in the movie when Danny says that you can't die until the grosses go down, and then that's a line that he's like, "Oh no, you're not going to die," and then Slater says, "Yeah, not until the grosses go down."
Yeah,
like there's moments of brilliance in this movie.
There is setup and payoff, you know, like, and that's I think probably the Shane Black influence on the script, but like you do get the impression of like, okay, it at least conforms to some of the expectations of writing where we have to earn things, we have to earn the payoffs.
Yes, which is not really a thing that you get much nowadays.
No, you absolutely don't.
Everybody tries to have the payoff without the setup, and unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
I hate anybody in the world would love it to work that way. To get paid to do the payoff to do nothing, that's great.
Well, is it like as a writer, I suppose like it'd be a lot easier if you could just drop anything into your story at any time and just have the audience buy into it. Like it, wasn't set up, it wasn't earned or anything. But it's like, it's easier for me, so that's the important thing. Yeah, great. But yeah, like Jack gets transported back to the movie realm, where he's just got a flesh wound, despite the fact that he's bleeding profusely. They're like,
even the like doctors in that world are like, "What? Why'd you bring him here? This is."
Yeah. I love, he goes into the chief's office and you get almost this impression of like, well, now that he's aware of his true nature as a character in a movie, he wants to change it and he wants to be something else than just.
Yeah, he wants to be more than just the character.
Yeah, and like you said before, like, okay, does that carry over to every Jack Slater movie now? Does the art somehow influence the real world or what? Or is it just in this little tiny pocket universe in that cinema? Who knows? I guess you're not supposed to think too much about it.
But yeah, it's funny because when he first go, like when they're getting ready to go back in, and he's like, the chief is like yelling for Slater. If you look, the like guys in the background are rebuilding his office windows.
Yeah,
and it says like on it like fragile.
Yeah. But it's I don't know, man. Like when I got to the end of this film, I had a pretty happy feeling. Like, and I think that's because the third act is where it really actually comes together as a film. Like it actually gets its act together, and yeah, like that payoff at the end with him like riding off into the sunset in his Cadillac or whatever the hell it is.
It's a Bonneville. It's a Bonneville.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I remember noticing that earlier. I don't know why I noticed it was Bonneville.
But it's a decent payoff, and like I kind of like that. I like the ending of it. Maybe he's going to become something else.
I do love how like there's just a doctor there. By the way, like is there a doctor in full medical scrubs stuff and medical gear? It's like, then he punches out the window, and he's like, yeah, it worked well.
Yeah,
like, my hand doesn't hurt.
Yeah, when I think back on like my overall opinions of this movie, I guess I stand by what I said before. Like the first act is really choppy. It feels like a bunch of different scripts all like crammed together. The second act, when they're actually inside the movie, is probably the weakest aspect of me. It's like the most farcical, the most silly, and the most of a wasted opportunity. And the third act is kind of where it gets more serious and it actually delves into some interesting ideas. And yeah, like what you end up with for me is kind of a flawed product that could have been so much more, but maybe it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. And
like you said, it was a little ahead of its time. They hadn't really, like up to this point, satirical stuff had been like Airplane.
Yes.
And where it was very evident that it was supposed to be satirical from start to finish. Where this kind of was trying to skirt the line.
It was, yeah. And it wasn't quite bold enough to like go all the way. And so you've got this thing where it's trying to please everyone. It's trying to be family friendly. It's got all the slapsticky comedy, the animated cats and stuff. And Oh man, if it'd been a little bit bolder and a little bit more intelligent, I think it could have been something really great. And particularly if it had been released now, or at least if they'd remade it now, I think it would have played a lot better because we're now in the era of deconstructing everything, and so I think people would have gone for it a lot more, and it would have been more understandable. I think coming out in 1993, yeah, maybe it was a little bit too ahead of
It
its
was
time,
just
and people
on that
weren't ready.
like border of like where people were getting kind of tired of the 80s action star.
Mm.
And I think maybe if it was like you said, like if it was released, maybe like obviously Arnold's too old to do it now, but maybe in like 2005 when he was still, like when he was an aged action star, that it would have, it kind of could have worked better if he had that weathered kind of like aged look, I think, as well. Like, because when he came into the real world, it'd be like, who
Yeah, it's like I
you're
maybe he
kind
tries
of
to
you're a relic.
yeah, and maybe he tries to flirt with like hot young women, and they're like, "Ugh, get away from me,
It's
you
like,
like
dude, you're like a
fucking old man."
60-year-old man. Like, what's going
Yeah,
on? Like,
like I'm not interested in you, and it's like, well, in my movies, this works.
yeah,
Like,
there was a lot of, I
mm,
would say that, like, if I had to put a percentage on what worked versus what didn't, somewhere in the 60 to 65% worked, but that 30 to 35, that 35 to 40% that didn't work does drag it down.
yeah,
So, and
I would agree. I would think, yeah, so much of like the totally over the top cartoonish stuff when they're in the movie world doesn't work. But there's some the fundamental idea behind this film is a great one, and if you had the ability to, in my kind of like wild fantasies of how I'd write this film, it's like, okay, I would make references to fucking every like major franchise throughout the 80s if this was coming out in that time period, and like
yeah,
bring in
I
all these iconic characters and all these iconic monsters and stuff. Like you could have an absolute blast with it. I know in a realistic sense that could never be
they
done,
were
but
they were handcuffed by what they could use,
yeah.
but
uh,
unfortunately, like, and like that's another thing. If it came out in a later time, they probably wouldn't have even been able to get away with the references that they did.
Probably not. No, they get sued, you know.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because that's, like, there, like you said, there's a lot of things that could have been better. And
You could
I still have a lot of
actually.
fun with this movie though. Like every time I watch it, it's still fun. But like I'm also able to like objectively be like, this doesn't work versus this does, and it's
I was just thinking there weirdly, like what you would be able to do if you did this same concept with, like, say, the Marvel movies now, where like the characters from those films were suddenly like transported into the real world. Like you had, I don't know, Tony Stark trying to use his crazy tech that just like
yeah.
absolutely wouldn't work here, or Black Widow tries to punch a guy that's like twice her size and it just does nothing to him, and he like throws her around the room. Like,
That's actually one of my biggest like pet peeves with a lot of action movies, current action movies, I should say. That the like people don't, and I understand most people in the real world don't understand how actual combat works. Like, weight distribution of like how punching power comes from more than just how hard you swing. Like, it's like that's just like how much arm power you can put into something. So it's like whenever I see like 100-pound woman like knock out a 230-pound guy, I'm like, nah. It's
yeah,
like, it takes me right out of that movie, unfortunately. And even if the movie is good besides that, it's hard for me to pull myself back into it.
yeah. I mean, I think that happens for everyone, but you can't say it because it makes you a bigot automatically.
Yes, it's you can't
But
you're
yeah,
not following the message.
oh yeah, the message. I mean, overall though, like with Last Action Hero, would you recommend it to people? Now, if you've never seen it, like, would you recommend that
I
people
do
watch it?
recommend it actually. I always say that like for its flaws, it's still fun. It's a fun ride. Like if you like Arnold and you like 90s stuff, which a lot of people, I think the 90s concepts have really made a resurgence recently. Like a lot of people miss that. Like early 90s, late 80s. And I think a lot of that stuff is still fun. and I think a lot of people don't have fun in theaters anymore and TV shows. And it sucks because that's the whole point. The whole point is that you're going to remove yourself from the shittiness of life. And if all you get thrown in your face is the shittiness of life just through the scope of Hollywood, which shouldn't be saying those kind of things to begin with because they don't even have the same problems half the time.
Yeah.
Is it like, what are you even watching then? You might as well not even watch it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's starting to show. I think that more and more people are getting fed up with being preached to and being told that, you suck. Like, nobody goes to something to say, to be told that they're terrible.
I tell you, I reviewed just today. I reviewed Triple R, like that Indian action movie.
Yeah, I didn't watch your review yet. I was planning on it later.
Yeah, don't watch it. I'm just talking nonsense. But like, no, but on the face of it, like, it should be like a ridiculous Bollywood, action film. Whereas like all the action is completely over the top. The CGI is bad. The storyline's all melodramatic and stuff. But I felt so like kind of emotionally fulfilled by the film. Like I watched that, like the characters were really interesting and fun and compelling and likable. I actually cared what happened to them, and by the end I was like, yeah, I've just watched a really good fucking movie there. I feel great. I feel the same way as I did when I watched like Top Gun Maverick. It was that same kind of feeling of like, yeah, that was just great. I didn't feel like I was being lectured. I didn't feel like I was being preached at or pandered to or anything. And it was made by a studio on the other side of the world for like a third of the budget of most Hollywood movies, and yet it was more enjoyable than what we get over here. And what a fucking disaster that Hollywood is now. That's what we go to in order to get some kind of like enjoyment out of cinema.
It's funny because like you mentioned the MCU. I know you end up talking about it a lot. I listen to pretty much every open bar and stuff, and it's amazing how they can take source material that has such like rich history and just throw their own, I don't want to say opinions, but like their own, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's like they you can tell that the writer is trying to say something through a story that was already written that had nothing to do with that. Yeah. And it is amazing. I do think that there is this downturn. It's like, I'm a huge comic fan. Like I was super when I saw that the She-Hulk panel that I had mentioned in your Patreon thing showed up in one of your videos. That was like before this moment, like this like last 2 hours or so. That was the coolest thing that had happened to me with the internet. So
this isn't cool.
And now that pales in comparison now. But like, there's so much great stuff that they could just take, and it's not just exclusive to comics. They're like I know you did the Resident Evil thing recently, and it's like, how do you ruin this? It's written like a B movie. It's like you could literally take the script and just make a movie out of it, and it would
it's
work.
Like someone's laid out the fucking red carpet for you. You just have to walk down it, and it's like they find a way to fucking fall off and soil themselves every single time.
Well, I will tell you this: there might be someone amongst the two of us who has taken it upon himself to start writing a good Resident Evil show.
You should.
Yeah,
it's not me.
I've already started it. Yeah. I've already started it. So,
but yeah, I mean, honestly, man, yeah, you like you say, it's a cheesy B movie plot with a bit of melodrama and a bunch of like conspiracies and stuff. It's not difficult. Just give us zombies, give us like dilapidated mansions and like burned out cities and stuff. That's all we want. It's easy.
Yeah, you could play around with a few things here and there, add a little bit, because obviously you want to pad the runtime if you're doing a show.
Yeah.
Like if you do it direct scene for scene, you're probably only get like 4 episodes realistically.
Yeah.
But you can add things, but as long as they make sense, like, as long as they
then you had
they're not going, it's not completely breaking the characters.
But yeah, like you had the the Netflix series that had nothing to do with Resident Evil at all.
No.
It was clearly like, the writers had their own story in mind, and it was like, fuck it, we'll just tell that, and we'll throw a bunch of like familiar character names in there with no context whatsoever, and just hope for the best. And well, wouldn't you know it, it's been cancelled already after one season because
I didn't even hear that it
nobody.
was canceled because I paid zero attention to it.
It's cancelled.
That was
now.
my contribution to the Resident Evil fandom, being a big fan of the games. Who actually just recently replayed 2. I like went through all 4 scenarios and was like, "This is like," and I'm talking the original 2.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, "This is fantastic. Why didn't they just make this into a movie?"
I know.
And
It was essentially they took a movie already and did like this sort of
yeah,
Japanese like version of it, in video game format, and that's all you needed. It
yeah.
was
My
fine.
contribution, the way I looked at it, was if I don't give them a single view, that's the best thing I can do for this franchise, is to not even give them my time. I know, like, you have to because you're, it's your job.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's
but
not always a pleasant one either.
oh no, I mean, I'm not even sure if I'd be able to get to what you do, because I'd be forced to watch things I hate, and I'm not sure if I could do that, to be honest with you. Because it's one thing to watch something you enjoy and then write about it or talk about it, but to actually force yourself to watch something that not only is terrible but is shitting on something you love, because I know you're a big fan of the Resident Evil games. You've done videos in the past, and like to like watch something that does that to something you love is probably even worse.
Hmm.
It's got to be like, it's like bad on 2 levels at that point.
Yeah, it's it's like someone pissing on your face and telling you it's champagne. Like it's not fun, man. But I mean, I just divorced myself from it completely and just say like, it's not Resident Evil. It's just someone's like ridiculous interpretation of it. Time to point out the problems with it and like go from there.
Yeah, that
But
was
yeah, I was going to say as well, like we do have some super chats that have come in, and if you've got a little bit of time, we can maybe go through
I've
them
got
together.
time, so
Okay, cool.
I feel like I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. So
yeah, there you go. Now is it. You got the opportunity to answer super chats. So there you go. JS Pena says, small correction. The Accountant came out 2 years before The Predator, plus it portrays autism more accurately. Yeah, I'm not sure what that was a reference to, but yes, that is true. And
I just remembered something that you and I talked about. So go on with your thing, and then I'll talk about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, The Accountant kind of tries to deal with it. I think it still portrays autistic people as like super smart and able to just figure out complex maths like instantly. But yeah, like it does at least, I think, delve into like how they really struggle with like changes in expectations and stuff, and things don't go their way, or like routine doesn't, routine changes, and so they can't handle it. And so some of that was pretty good. I think Ben Affleck did a decent enough job in that movie. It's Hollywood's version of autism, but ultimately, it's something at least, I guess.
Before you move on to the second one, I remembered from your super chat catch up for the most recent open bar, you were unaware of the Brendan Schaub thing that somebody
Yeah,
asked
what
about.
is that?
So Brendan Schaub is a MMA fighter, and he was on the Ultimate Fighter. He got second place. He got knocked out hilariously. He's not a bad fight. He wasn't a bad fighter. He just was never going to get to that next level. I actually, just for continuity, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but the sake of, I used to be involved with the amateur MMA scene, and I'm a jiu-jitsu brown belt, and so like I know about some of this stuff. He was like a decent fighter, but he's really buddy with Joe Rogan,
Right.
and a couple of other comedians, and he kind of like leapfrogged the usual comedian thing, like the going on the circuit and testing out your material, and then eventually you get your HBO special and all that stuff. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And then he had like a friend of his. This is a very brief version. This is a very long story. So this is a very brief version. But a friend of his that was a comedian. It was a guy who used to be on Mad TV. I can't. Like, an Asian guy who used to be on Mad TV, and his like wife like called him out for like basically like sexually like harassing her at like a party,
Right.
and he like basically like threatened lawsuits and stuff to her, and then they got into a big legal battle back, and essentially he became like the laughing stock of like the YouTuber comedy world, so to say, I guess it would be. So there is a controversy there. I don't know how you could really say much about that, but I do know that somebody brought that up in the last open bar.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I'm not big into MMA or anything, so I wouldn't have known really what was going on there. But yeah. Oh, at least that's a bit of context for us, so we kind of know what was going on. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
cool.
something I like heard someone ask, and I hope that person's actually in the chat
Yeah,
because
yeah, they're gonna get context now.
this is really weird if they're not.
Well, at
But
least people know now.
yeah, it was a there was a lot of details to it. There's like you could find it if you really searched, but essentially he's just become like he was not really that great of a comedian. He had like an HBO special that he shouldn't have had. He wasn't funny. Uh, like he had a couple of jokes here and there that were funny, but for the most part, to fill in a half hour, it wasn't there. And he only leapfrogged all the like stuff because of who he knew. And they basically told him like, "Hey, you should stop being an MMA fighter and just be a comedian. You're funny." And he took that seriously. And you can't blame a guy for trying, but like he did eat a lot of shit for essentially circumventing the system that most people have to go through.
No, fair enough, man.
So
Cool.
sorry to detract from the other super chats.
No, that's fine. We got time. RRTNZ said, "Hail Drunkler. Last Action Hero was ambitious and fun, but not as well executed as Arnie's classic action films. True Lies next, maybe? I would happily talk about that. Another early 90s action film worthy of your attention is The Crow. Cheers." Yeah, I would definitely like to talk about The Crow because I've fallen into the trap of saying that like Blade was the first movie to get us into that kind of R-rated dark action comic book movie style. But it wasn't. It was The Crow. And The Crow came like 4 or 5 years before it. So damn, man. Yeah.
And then it was followed by like 3 terrible sequels.
Yeah. I actually, when I
One
was
with
at
Furlong, I believe, if I recall correctly.
yeah, man, he was looking rough in that. But yeah, when I was at Tampa Comic Con, I was able to do a panel with the James Obar, who wrote The Crow, like the original graphic novel comic book thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to talk about, his inspiration for it and stuff like that. And like, damn, I think I fucked that one up a little bit actually because I can't believe this happened. Someone gave me a bottle of Jack Daniels just before it. Like just a fan that came up to me at my booth and like they gave it to me. I was like, yeah, I'll have that drinker. And I was like, all right, fucking cool. So I took that with me to
As
the
they were allowed
panel.
to bring that in. They must have snuck that in.
I don't know how it happened, but like it happened and I was very happy with it. But I slammed this thing down on the table when we did the panel and I was like, right, that's me. I'm ready to go. And I was interviewing James O'Barr. And so I said to him, like, okay, so, could you tell us like what your inspiration was for doing The Crow? Like what got you started with this? And so he started up with, well, my wife was killed by a drunk driver. And I just thought, oh, fuck.
Well, that definitely yeah,
I'm not proud of that. I am genuinely not fucking proud of that. I have done
well, I
things
mean,
in my
in your
life where I
defense,
fucked up.
like you could, unless you had like gone into it knowing much about that, like I know you're not much of a comic
I
guy.
didn't
I know
have a
you
lot
brought
of
on
time
Mark
to
Millar in
prep
the
for this one.
past,
I
but
didn't have a
like
lot of time.
yeah, like I know you're not like really a comic guy, so like that's kind of like comic lore that like I mean, I'm a huge comic guy and I didn't even know that, so I wouldn't have known that off the top of my head.
That didn't get my interview off to a great start. I'm not gonna lie.
I can imagine that being an immediate downturn.
Oh damn. But yeah, never mind. You live and learn, I suppose. So the next one was Chuxenhausen, who said, "Oh, drinker, you whimsical whiskey lover, how excited are you knowing that in 8 days Cobra Kai will be back and with a vengeance? I will say that I'm a bit nervous with all the added actors. Hopefully, Hawk will still be used a lot given his legendary status. Cheers to that upcoming happy hour." Yeah, I am looking forward to it, man. Way more than fucking Rings of Power, that's for damn sure.
I should have wore my Eagle Fang shirt. I didn't think of that.
Yeah,
I was
I
just
do.
kind of trying to contrast the green screen. So like,
Yeah, no, I think you're all right. I think you're all right there. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to talking about it. I'm going to blast through that season and yeah, do like a summary stream. And Chucksenhausen, you will absolutely be involved, sir. Grimnack28 said, cheers, drinker, you base bastard of bombastic benevolence. Mauler, I really enjoyed your discussion, and I think EFAP 199 on the opinion of super chats and reading the name of the amount donated. So I'm not sure why you thought Mauler was going to be here, but yeah, I mean,
I can pretend to be Mauler. I just
yeah, you're gonna need like a very posh Welsh accent, but
I would have needed a little bit of time to work on that.
We've talked about this, I think, once or twice before, Mauler and I, when we've done streams together. I don't, when I read things out, I don't generally say how much people donated or anything, because I don't feel like it's necessary unless it's something crazy like they gave me $100 or something. Like, obviously,
yeah,
I'll say thank you just for that.
Those people are committed, man. Like.
But I will say their name because I want them to know. Well, I want everyone else to know what this person asked me, and I want them to just know that, like, hey, this is your question. I'm addressing you particularly. So that's just me. People have different ways of doing it. Each to their own. Totally fine. I don't mind.
And you've always been honestly like, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on this stream. I've said this.
Yeah, you are, and I'm just bragging.
I've said this off to people who I've suggested you to. Like, you're so good with your fans. Like, obviously, but like the fact that you have super chat catch up streams that like are sometimes longer than the thing that they were for is like, that just speaks volumes about your channel, how much you care about your fans, and you never miss a person. Like, I like my first super chat I think I ever did was when you did your Predator open bar. And it just happened to sync up. It came out on the day the anniversary of my father's death, and my father and me were,
man.
Well, I mean, it was a long time ago. I appreciate your, but my father was really big into showing me action movies as a kid, and he loved showing me Predator. There was actually, my mother makes fun of it all the time. She tells me stories about how like she'd come home from work and I'd be eating lunch watching Predator at like 5 years old, like, which is not an age you should be watching the Predator, but and the fact that it came out on that day, and I felt the need on your very next open bar to like, or your next it was whatever your next stream was, and I was like, I have to super chat him and tell him like that meant so much to me, even though like it was so random, and you read it even though it was like 50 deep. It was like, you made sure to get to it, and that was awesome.
I think and it does get harder, I guess, as you get more super chats and stuff, and there's more to get through. But ultimately, like, people have taken the time out of their lives to not only like message you, but also pay money to you as well, like donate towards your channel and helping you do what you do. It'd be a really shitty thing to like just ignore it and not even respond to it. Like, and
there's a lot of people who would ignore it and not respond to it.
I know, and it's a tough one because like each kind of person approaches it in their own way. But like, even with chat now, like it's skimming by as I'm talking to you right now, and there's like probably hundreds of messages that I've not been able to even see, and it's not because I'm ignoring people, but like my attention can only go in so many different places at the same time. But I feel even bad about that because it's like, well, these people are saying things or asking me questions or whatever, and I'm not even answering them. And it's like, you can only do so much as a human, I guess. Like, there's only so many things you can pay attention to. But yeah, I'm just, I don't know, man. I'm just, I'm grateful to be doing this. Like, ultimately, people are supporting me just talking about films, and that's a pretty fucking awesome position to be in. And
I think that's what separates you, guys like you and Mauler and a lot of the guys you bring on for your open bars, is there's a lot of YouTubers, obviously. There's a lot of content creators out there, and a bunch of them don't care. Like, they just, as long as you watch their product, and they'll throw you a bone from time to time. Everybody you bring on seems to be genuinely interested and invested in their audience, which I think speaks like to the audience itself and gets people to be like loyal to you. It keeps their loyalty. Like, I remember when I first started watching your like I think it was like basically it had probably about 2-3 years ago. It was like right around the pandemic, and a friend of mine had started suggesting things because I was just frustrated with a lot of mainstream media. And we're like, first one was actually Mauler that he introduced me to, but because Mauler has got a slower pace to what he was like, I was like, oh, I'm out of stuff already. And he was like, oh, check out The Critical Drinker. And I was like, and I watched everything that you put. Like I was at work and people were listening to like me listen to this and they were like, what are you listening to? And I was just like, I was like, I just watched it and watched it and watched it. And like, it was, and the fact that like, and that was one of the things I gravitated towards with you was that every time you had a super chat or you had somebody who would contribute to something, you made sure to mention it. And that means a lot to a person like me. And I'm sure it means a lot to a lot of the people out here.
No, thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'll do the next one here. So, Unhinged, he said, it's no hot rod with Az, but I'll take it all night long. That will be happening, by the way. And I think Mahler's up for doing a happy hour on hot rod because
I did my best. I'm not a professionally trained YouTuber, so.
Oh no, this is just like I think it's like more about the movie than the people on the actual stream doing it because like yeah, people are quite keen on me doing this. Toxic 282 says, Drinker, you alpha male warrior of words, please have a drink on me. Well, I absolutely will. Thank you, man. In fact, I'm going to pour myself one right now because it's been a while since I've taken one. So here it is. There's not a huge amount of whiskey left in this bottle.
I ran out of the expensive tequila, so I went with the cheap tequila.
Yeah. Man's got to have a backup. But cheers. Thank you, man. Oh, that's good. Kevin O'Neill says, Drinker, I was surprised to learn that you have not seen the last Airbender series. I just wasn't into the Airbender stuff. I can't recommend it enough. 3 seasons of gorgeous animation, S-tier world building, deep character development for your own enjoyment. It's very much worth a watch. Cheers. Well, thank you very much, man, for the recommendation. I know people have recommended Airbender to me before. Fucking hell, man, it's just finding the time to watch it. I suppose that's my problem. Decay 79, and this is, I guess, a good question for both of us right here. Terminator 1 or 2, which is the better in your opinion? So,
do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
I have this debate with myself constantly. So I've kind of boiled it down to this. Terminator 2 is the better ride. It definitely gets you from point A to point B in a way faster paced, fun way. But Terminator 2, that solid kind of, like fully contained story of like, John Connor is born because he sends somebody back, and it's a completely cyclical timeline. There's something about Terminator 1 that just always, every time I'm like, no, it's Terminator 2. It's Terminator 2. Terminator 1 just, it like closes the gap. If I had to, with a gun to my head, somebody said you have to pick one, it's probably Terminator 2. But it's way closer than most people would think.
I kind of agree on this one, although I'm going to go down on the side of Terminator 2, and I'll tell you why. Generally, I'm a fan of like originals, and like I prefer like original creative ideas over like sequels and derivative movies and that sort of thing. But when I consider like the ideas that the films managed to juggle and all of the stuff that it manages to do correctly, I come down on the side of Terminator 2. Like, obviously, all the special effects and everything are way better because the budget's enormous. And
10 years later, just like
they
literally made a movie in the abyss to test the technology for Terminator 2.
They did, yeah, the liquid metal effects. Yeah. But when I think about like Sarah Connor as a character and like how much more I like her in Terminator 2 and what she's wrestling with, I'm always going to come down on that side. She was just kind of annoying and a bit whiny and stuff in Terminator 1 because she hadn't done any of this stuff yet. But like, fucking hell, in terms of crafting an iconic character, like they absolutely nailed it with Terminator 2. It was a great switch to have Arnold become like the good Terminator that's trying to protect them. The action sequences were incredible. Even now they look fantastic. and the Liquid T1000 was just a great antagonist. So I am going to come down on the side of T2, but I think they're both fantastic
Well,
movies.
I came
And
down on the side of T2 as well. I've just said
yeah,
they were really close.
Mm.
But yeah, Robert Patrick was fantastic in that movie. Like the fact that he blinks once firing a gun,
yeah,
like, is insane. Like the fact that he was able to train his body to not blink at explosions happening here, like,
yeah.
is like the commitment of that, because like the first movie had like, I wouldn't say commitment issues, but there definitely was like Arnold didn't take it seriously as much as like he was like even said like,
Well, when you talk about blinking, like when firing guns, like there's definitely times when he pulls a face when he's
yeah,
firing the Uzi,
yeah,
and it's just it's loud and like it's going to make you flinch a little bit. Like it's just the nature of it.
they're
But
both. I mean, you really either way you can't go wrong. It's
yeah,
like nobody's gonna criticize you for being like the first one's better because it's the first one.
yeah. But I mean, Christ, two great movies. Man, we
The
were
imagery
spoiled.
alone in the second one, like just like some of the like, and the cinematography is just fantastic. Like
Oh,
the
it's
first one
beautiful.
had flaws in the cinematography for a few reasons. Like the second one is essentially the same story. Like if you
Yeah,
really look at it, like beat for beat, they're almost the exact same story. But like the second one is just so much more polished.
I that I will never not love that scene where the Arnold walks to the end of the building with the minigun and
Oh
just absolutely
yes.
unloads. Like that is just like
It's
an
the same
iconic
model
scene.
minigun as Blaine and Predator too. That's the
Yeah.
best part. Yeah.
And yeah, we know like it doesn't actually work like that, and like it kind of was all connected up to like truck batteries and stuff to actually make it function. Doesn't matter. It looks just fucking beautiful.
I
It's a symphony of fucking action and destruction all just happening in front of you. Like love it.
I laugh every time I see where it's like civilian casualties 0.0, as if you can have like a point 0.3
Yeah, like this
civilian
guy's partially dead, but
yeah,
like it's
like
all right.
that guy might die.
Yeah. Um Holly Kerbo says, "Greetings, gents. Great to see an amazing classic being covered. But ever since Arnie said, 'Screw your freedom' last year, I can't look at him the same." I mean, Arnie's kind of an old man now, and I think sometimes he shoots from the hip. I think when he speaks, I'm not going to try and cover for him. Like, I'm not going to get into politics of
There is
the,
a sequence in the movie that we didn't even cover where Nick is talking about how like all the terrible things of the world, and he mentions politicians twice.
yeah.
And
I
I
think
was
that's
like,
fair play. He probably should have mentioned them a third time,
yeah.
really.
And I thought that was hilarious considering the route that Arnold would go
Yeah,
only a decade later. So
it's yeah,
becoming the governor of a state he can't even pronounce.
yeah.
So
California.
like, California.
See It Twice said, "Watch it, Jack. He killed Mozart. This introduced me to Amadeus, my favorite film. Forever grateful." Well, there you go. That's like a beautiful little bit of like cyclical reference in there. Like Last
Yeah.
Action Hero introduced you to an Oscar-winning movie. That's pretty good.
I've never actually watched Amadeus. Like I know of it. Um, it's one of those things that I'm always like, if I get the chance, I'll watch it. But I've like never seen it on a streaming service,
It's not
and
talked
yeah,
about
it's they're
much
probably
now.
never going to be. So,
Yeah,
and I've gotten to the point now where like, if it's not on a streaming service, I'm probably not going to get it. I'm probably not going to watch it. So,
I don't blame you.
I mean, it's like you pay so much for streaming services. Why are you going to like, ironically enough, like I had Last Action Hero in my Voodoo uh like wish list forever. Like I need eventually this will go on sale or I'll have a reason to buy it. And then like you messaged me about like fuck it, let's do this. And I was like, I guess I have my excuse.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah, like even from my point of view, and like I kind of need them to be able to like just review stuff, but it's like got Netflix, got Amazon Prime, got
yeah.
like Disney Plus.
Well, that's what I've
They
said to
all add up,
people,
man.
like, because like I'm obviously a patron backer for you, and like people have asked me before, like, why would you pay a YouTuber? Like they put all their stuff out for free, and I'm like, I get
Yeah,
more
why would you?
enjoyment. I will explain that to you why I would. So, like, I get more enjoyment out of the 4 to 6 hours of content you put out a week than most of the stuff that these high priced streaming services put out daily. It's, like, even if the quality isn't, the production quality isn't great, it's like the enjoyment level is there. I'm listening to it all the time. I listen.
Mm,
I bust up the open bars into so I have about a 45 minute to an hour commute every day, and your open bars are about, give or take 2.5, 3 hours, and so I bust them up into three of my commutes back, and so I got that, and then Mauler puts out a 5 hour breakdown of something. That's another a week of my commute, and it's just it's worth the money. It's worth the $60 or $80 a year. It's like whatever it turns into.
yeah. No, that's awesome to hear, man. It's always interesting to hear people's perspectives on what we actually make and like how people listen to it and what they do with it. No, it's pretty cool. Big discussions. 76 said Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister played a good guy. A good bad guy in The Last Action Hero. I mean, yeah, he absolutely did.
I don't think he's
Can't
ever
fault
played
his
a good
performance.
guy. I know that was you misread it a little bit. I don't think he's ever played a hero or a good guy.
No, that's true. But he's great as a bad guy. I think that's what they were saying there.
It's that
Um,
slow delivery system. It's just that way he talks. It's not even just the British accent, which does help. There's the whole Revolutionary War British people are evil thing that has existed in the United States forever. But it's just that slow delivery he has, and it's just
mm,
very it's very deliberate, and it makes you feel like this guy has his shit together no matter what the situation.
yeah. Jester of Roanoke says, I started to tune out of Arnie at the 6th day. It seemed lame. It was, yeah. By that point, yeah, he was just trying to do the same shit that he'd done 10 years earlier, but he was old now, and it wasn't good film.
I think that's the one movie of his I've never seen.
Don't watch it.
I
It's not
won't.
worth it.
I won't. I the last one, kind of pre Expendables era, was End of Days, which wasn't as bad as I remember it, but it's not good either. It's like an average movie, which by that, but it's when you're going to see an Arnold action movie, you're not expecting average. You want
Mm.
over the top, and there's
I think
some scenes that work, but
I think Arnold's the problem he had was just it was always going to be he was about the physique, the muscles, the presence on screen, and that was great throughout the 80s and the early 90s. But as you get older, that starts to fade a little bit, and it just wasn't there anymore. And his acting wasn't really strong enough to carry him through to the next stage of his career. Like Clint Eastwood was a guy who transitioned into older roles, great because he was a really good actor.
yeah.
Arnold didn't have that, and so he was kind of just stuck in that time period of the 80s and the early 90s, and couldn't really
Yeah,
progress
and like we
beyond
said
it.
about the physique thing, it's you can even see from Terminator to Predator, which was only 3 years or whatever between the two of them, and he had slimmed down significantly from his Mr.
I think
Olympia days.
I think in the case of Predator, that was intentional. Like he wanted to be lean for that one because
It doesn't help that he was sweating up a storm and not
yeah,
consuming protein for months on end. But
I think the actual shooting conditions were kind of nightmarish on the set of Predator. Like it was a tough film to shoot. Like
yeah,
nobody involved in it enjoyed themselves, but it looks great on screen. I think with him though, probably from about True Lies onward, you can tell he was starting to lose the physique. Like he was very rarely had the arms out anymore or anything like that. It was kind of covered up, and it's
well,
yeah,
to
he's getting older
maintain
now.
that is just that level that he was at in Terminator, because even that was small compared to his Mr. Olympia days.
Yeah, I mean he wasn't he
Yeah,
wasn't in competition shape anymore, but
yeah, to maintain that, the diet, and he wouldn't have been able to film movies. He would have had to 100% of the time be worrying about that. I mean, you can be in great shape. Like the MCU has proven you can be in fantastic shape and filming basically constant films. But to be in Mr. Olympia shape that's your full-time job. That's you
yeah.
can't even do anything else.
Well, yeah, I
So
mean, even if it, even for bodybuilders, they don't stay in that kind of shape
no.
full time. Like they get into like competition shape for like a couple of weeks, like to bring it down to that point where they're in like the best physical condition they can be, and then like they have to stop because like they need to start eating properly again and all that stuff.
Well, not only that, it's like to get that vascularness. Like I've cut weight before, like draining the body, kind of cut weight, and it is the worst thing you can do. It is. It makes you want like there's nothing worse at that moment because you're hungry, thirsty, you just hate everything. So I wouldn't want to do. I don't understand how people do that constantly. I did it like once every month. People doing it like it's like I don't blame them.
Yeah. And I think with Arnold as well, like he's got like some congenital heart defect that like required surgery in the late 90s. That's why he was out of movies for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that like kind of limited what he could do after that. And so yeah, he was just kind of done really. It's a shame, but like he's obviously still kicking, so all good.
I mean, like it's like anything though. Like he had his moment and then it was replaced. It's fine. And he kind of had a resurgence later, but you never got. It's very rare to stay on top of Hollywood forever. Like realistically, who has done that? Like there's always been ebb and flow to it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Blunt says, please read the Expanse books before forming an opinion of the series. They're still worth the time. The last three will 100% change your view of the series. I mean, I like the series, so I don't know, man. Like
that's on my list.
Unless the books are terrible, like I'd be all right with it. Chef Nick Nero says, this was the only movie my dad took me to when I was a kid because I had done something stupid in school and they told him to spend more time with me. Well, I mean, hope it worked out for you, man. Like, sorry about that.
Well, I'm glad that you have like that to like that'll be your thing going forward, just like me with the Predator. Like I said before, it's a cool thing to have to latch onto because you have I don't know if this particular person's father is still around or whatnot, but to have that thing that you can latch onto and be like, this is something I experienced with a parent, it kind of makes them immortal. It's a really cool feeling. Like every time I watch The Predator and I watch it with my son, like even though he's 6 months, I'm just kind of holding him. But it's like,
but yeah, you're gonna turn him into a goddamn sexual tyrannosaur one day,
or Sexosaurus Rex.
Yeah, Sexosaurus.
But I mean, I've told you my son's name. Do you remember? Come on, I've told you on your Patreon thing. It's John.
Matrix.
John Connor.
Hey, there you
go. So like clearly I've committed something toward that. But yeah, it's that to have that moment of like I saw this with my parent, whichever one it may be, father, mother, and you can relive it all the time, and it's awesome. I love it. I love it every minute, every time I do it. So
nice. Canon Falderall says, I always thought of the tone shift as commentary on sequel decay. Kid dies in Jack Slater 3. Danny is sent into number 4. Compare RoboCop to RoboCop 3. I mean, it's a nice idea. I just don't think the rationale behind it was that deep when they were writing the script, unfortunately. 0718 Dragon Lord says, Dark Harvest is great so far. Also, I'm narrating it in my head as the drinker, as you should. Would be hilarious if you narrated your books in character. I mean, I would love to, man, but I did like the first chapter of Something to Die For, and that took me ages to narrate. Like that's a big commitment.
I've known a couple people who have done like audiobooks, and it's actually like a god awful experience from what I've heard.
It kind of destroys your vocal cords. Like,
you're saying like literally like 15,000 words. It's like,
well, it's 100,000 in the case of my book. So yeah.
Well, I'm saying like per session.
Per chapter,
yeah. I'm not saying like the overall. I'm saying like per session. You're saying like 15,000 words.
Yeah. Justin Debari says, my family owns the pinball machine for this movie, yet not one of my family has ever seen it. That's pretty
That thing might be worth a lot of money, actually. Pinball machines are like legit collector's items.
Yeah, I think probably, yeah.
And if you have like certain ones, like they're like Star Wars ones and like those ones, like the original Star Wars ones, like from like you could retire on those. Like,
no, I can totally believe it. Anthony Stackhouse says, "Hail Drinker, love the videos. Have you ever seen the movie The Hunter? It's from 2011 and it stars Willem Dafoe as a hunter hired to kill an extinct animal for its pharmaceutical properties." How does he
Never
kill
heard
an
of it.
extinct animal if it's extinct?
Endangered, I think, is what he was trying to say.
I guess so, yeah. But
I'm
no, I
I'm
haven't
I'm a
seen
bit
that.
of a hunter myself. If he doesn't say that, if he's not like I consider myself a bit of a hunter. Like,
Yeah. But no, I do like Willem Dafoe, so yeah,
everything
intriguing.
Willem Dafoe is in is fantastic. Like everything he puts 100% into everything he does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jim K says, "Critical Drinker, love your channel. Next happy hour, please cover Demolition Man, Judge Dredd, or Point Break. Cheers." I mean, I've already done a review of Demolition Man on my main channel, so you can check that out. But yeah, Judge Dredd, the Stallone one. Oh Christ. Or
Oh
Point
my god,
Break.
don't even start me on that.
Yeah, Jara Mayo says, "Last Action Hero was my first Arnie movie in theaters." Jesus. Well, you didn't exactly start on a high note, but yeah, it is what it is, I suppose. Roy Cole says, "I've noticed that you don't sound as drunk as you should be in your recent videos. You actually sound like a person with cognitive thought. Please go back." I will do my best to get more drunk in future videos in that case.
I think people come to expect the over the top voice that you do for some of your reviews and stuff, which I
Yeah.
know is something that you can't maintain for 3 hours probably, but
It gets a bit difficult, yeah, to get that drunk and then have to like maintain it.
if it
That's
makes that person feel any better, I don't drink much and I had like 9 shots of tequila and at certain points I couldn't remember why I was on this channel.
yeah.
So,
I'm like that every day, to
yeah.
be fair. So you're all right.
Yeah, I don't really drink that much, so. But I have to drink with the drinker.
Hey,
It's kind of implied.
of course you got to do it. Rusty Sheckelfur says, "A few things to consider, maybe. Okay, so it seems a little off the wall as a whole, granted, but is it fair to stick this particular film in a box to get it to work? Also, what could the narrative glue have been to really tie all these aspects together in a cohesive manner? Is that even possible for such an imaginative film? I think for me, um, I would have liked a little bit of a more tonal balance throughout the movie. So, um, when he does get transported into the movie world, it's a little bit more subtle, like I kind of said before throughout this. So I don't want to labor the point too much. And yeah, like the idea of Danny not having a father figure in his life because his father passed away, I would like to have seen more exploration of that with him and Jack. Just,
Yeah, it was
I
kind of
think
thrown
that
away.
because clearly the relationship between those two is the glue that really binds this story together, and so I just like that to be rationalized a little bit more. So that would be it for me, I think.
I agree with you that it's mostly tonal. It's not like the action sequences where when they are allowed to like explore them work very well. I think there was something about it being in a box or something like I'm assuming that means like a vacuum, like being compartmentalized. Uh, it itself, like I said earlier, is like 65%. Like which is a passing grade, 65% technically.
Hmm.
But like there was just certain aspects, and I think it really just comes down to there was too many cooks in the kitchen. There was a
Hmm.
lot of writers involved, and they rewrote multiple parts. Like we said, the only scene that actually exists from the original script is that Hamlet scene, which almost feels like it has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
Uh,
strange
but
that one.
I love that sequence, and I love the fact that they got his like widow, Laurence Olivier's widow, to like introduce him as an actor, which is great. But in the end, it's like there is parts of it like, and maybe that does actually kind of work to its strength at some points where it's like because it starts in the real world, it goes to the movie world, it comes back to the real world, and then briefly comes back to the movie world. And so like the disjointed feeling kind of gets swept to the side in a sense that like you're almost watching a few different movies, but not in the same way like Predator, where it's like this like seamless transition from one to the other. There's a
Yeah,
very line of delineation between them.
it's clunky. It is
Yes.
clunky. RRTNZ says, "Hey Drunkler, great guest today. Well done, Darkhour, for bringing the knowledge and insight. Hope to see him on a future stream. Have one of me and lads."
I'd love to do another one. I'm not like, This is something that I've kind of like, I don't think I ever would be able to do it to the level of a lot of you guys, a lot of the professionals. But I try, anytime I do anything, I try to bring as much to the table as I can. And the fact that you gave me an opportunity to, and like I said earlier, I wasn't expecting to be in front of this many people. And you probably could notice it early on. I was really nervous in the beginning, and I loosened up as I went along. But
9
yeah,
shots of tequila will do that for you.
I mean, I was starting to loosen up before that. But ironically enough, it's the only thing I like drinking. It's like everything else, I'm like, eh. It's like people like laugh at me all the time. They're like, tequila, really? Like, and I'm like, it works for Dwayne Johnson. Why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally do another one. I would research whatever. You know, it's I just like to talk about things I enjoy, things I like to watch, and maybe one day I'll be able to transition that into something. I told you earlier before we even started that if me and a friend of mine are we started recording, we want to record a few more because we both have full-time jobs, so keeping up with a release schedule will be difficult, but we want to do like old 90s cartoons and stuff, so which is kind of a niche.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, I like when we started this, I was asking you if you had like a channel that I could, you know, make people aware of, but obviously you haven't quite like launched it yet. So there's not anything in that I can plug for you, but
No, I understand. I appreciate that you really wanted to. I wish I could. Like I don't have it yet.
yeah. But then there's the next time, you know. So I'm sure
Yeah,
it'll
I
all
mean,
be good, man.
if the drinker will have me and the audience wants to see me, I can make it happen.
There
So.
we go. The next one is Charles Hurst, who gave me a $50 super sticker. So thank you very much, my friend. I really appreciate that donation. Toxic82 says, Alpha Male Warrior of Words, take a drink with me. Well, I will indeed, my friend. Cheers to you. Ooh. I'm almost out, actually. And he also gave me a super sticker for $20. So thank you, man. Chris Curran says, one of my son's favorite films growing up. Ah, there you go. It's always nice when you get like family stories around films like this. You know, it's there's a lot of randomness, like where people just stumbled upon it, or like their dad showed it to them, or something.
It's
But it's
always
all
the
good,
dad
man.
too. Everybody's dad showed them an Arnold movie. It's no, I've never heard a story like my mother was really into Arnold movies.
Yeah. Next one is Brenton Palmer, who says, Morning from New Zealand, drinker, you beautiful bastard. Hot Shots, happy hour with Az when? I would love to do that, especially Hot Shots Part Due. One is better than Part Due. I disagree with that. I think Due is better. Ellie is gay, by the way. Love you, my dude. Cheers, man. Really
I need
appreciate
to
that.
say this. I love that your fandom, which I don't know, do we have a name? Your fandom? I don't.
I don't think we do, you know. I never named them.
The
No.
drunk tank. There we go. Going
There you
forward,
go, yeah.
it's the drunk tank. Everybody start saying it. I love that they try to do the like alliterations. I do it all the
Yeah,
time
yeah.
too. Every time I've sent you anything, it's always been an alliteration, and it's a fun little gimmick. I love it.
Yeah,
Drunk
well,
tank.
I try to work it into my reviews sometimes. You know, I just get the thesaurus out and away I go. You know, See It Twice says Slater verse is better than the multiverse. I would fucking 100% agree with that at this point.
It's a
The,
shame too. It really is because so many of the early MCU movies are so good.
honestly, we
It's
could have
like
a whole other stream bitching about the state of the MCU.
if you
It
want
would
to,
go on
if
for
you want,
hours.
I will. I'll do it.
Yeah,
I'll do it. Like I'll turn my cameras around right now and I'll show you. I have shelves of comics here. I
yeah,
it's such a shame because the MCU it had its flaws. Like there was misfires like Dark World, but for the most part, every like 3 out of every 4 movies was good. Maybe not
Mm.
great, but good. And it's just gotten to a point where it's unrecognizable.
Oh, it's torture now at this point. You know, it's like flaying a corpse. The Master Nater says, one, did you see any parallels between this story and Ready Player One? And two, do you think the story idea could be retold with technology instead of magic? I wouldn't want to see it done with technology. No,
Nah,
magic
I
has
don't
to
think
be the
that would
way
work.
in. Ready Player One and this, not really. No, unless it's just like the general, like whimsical, like kind of emotional beats at the end. Like, it's like there's something magical about our ability to create fictional worlds. That's like a common theme, I suppose. But then you could apply that to any movie, really. But yeah, like I see Ready Player One as being quite a different thing. I fucking loved the books. Sorry, the book of Ready Player One. Didn't love the movie so much, but I think that's the
That's the
same for most
general
people.
consensus. I'm not much of a reader if there's not pictures involved.
Yeah,
Uh, but I have been known to read a few books here and there. Uh, but the general consensus seems to be that the movie wasn't nearly as good as the book.
yeah, I would agree. Very much. It was condensed down to make it like more cinematic, but yeah,
Well, that's
lost a
what
lot of
happens. I mean, a
detail.
book, theoretically, if you take a book, you can make 9, 10, 11 hours out of content, whereas a movie you have at absolute most 3 hours. Anything more than that, and you've lost everybody.
Yeah. Canon Folderall says, great discussion, Dark and Drinker. For comparison to Last Action Hero, have you seen Woody Allen's Purple Rose of Cairo? Similar idea, characters come out of the movie and into our world, but very different. I haven't seen that, I'm afraid, so
I'll
I
have to
don't know,
check
man.
that out. I like that concept. So
Curtis Smith says, really enjoying Dark Harvest. Well done, young man. Thank you. I'm not feeling particularly young these days, but I'm glad you're enjoying Dark Harvest, mate. Appreciate it. Desert Fox says, I was a teen movie buff in the 90s, so I got the Amadeus reference. See, I knew fuck all back then. Arnold and
consider
Stallone.
yourself one of very few.
Yeah. Arnold and Stallone were competitive back then in the action hero scene. They were indeed, yeah, but I think it was a friendly rivalry for the most part. So,
Yeah, they used to they were friends. I mean, at this point, by the time this movie came out, they had gone into partnership for Planet Hollywood. So they weren't like bitter rivals. Like,
yeah, it was just competitive. Like,
it
it wasn't
wasn't like
hatred.
Arnold and Lou Ferrigno where they like didn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, man. I've seen Pumping Iron, man. He fucked Lou Ferrigno over.
I've met Lou Ferrigno. He's like the nicest dude in the world.
He really seems like a nice guy. Like, he
I met
just,
him at New York Comic Con, like probably about this has got to be like 11 years ago, and he's like legally deaf, so like, and it's a loud environment, so like he's trying to hear you, and he's reading your lips, and if you don't have a very enunciated version of speaking, it's like what he signs is whatever you get. It's like,
yeah. No, it's a shame, man. Jan Javi says, Drinker, I recently finished Dark Harvest and I really liked it. It was super creepy in some scenes and very intense. Excellent. Congratulations on your success. Thank you very much, man. I'm glad you enjoyed the story. John Orchard says, by Dark Harvest, he writes a good story. There's a lot of Dark Harvest love here. I love it. Chris Curran says, the meetup at Ice Bar in Orlando was a great fan time. Hopefully you return for October for Geeks and Gamers. Well, I will see what's happening. I might be in New York at the same time, but I'll see what I can do. But yeah, the Ice Bar was good fun, man. And yeah,
really
looking forward.
you're in New York.
Yeah, looking forward to doing more fan meetups and having it better planned in future because we kind of had to throw it together at the last minute because I didn't know if I was going to be going or not. Ian Max says if they had held onto their nerve and had T2 be an 18 rating, it would have been a competition between 1 and 2. Too many times you can tell they pulled back on armor plated killing machines and weakened it. I mean, I had no issues with the gore levels in T2. I was fine with it.
It doesn't need like that's the thing is I don't think it needed to be like when you have like literally a liquid machine that can keep replenishing itself, the gore level is going to be low anyway. There's just so many things about T2 that like I could talk about T2. I'm not even kidding for like days. And
Muller and I did our best. you know,
just the merits of like certain things, like the attention to certain details, and like the extra arms for the when the T-1000 is piloting and he's reloading.
Yeah,
and he had like the fact that like they even thought of that. Like they didn't need to. They could have just easily been like, we won't show that. He just reloads. But like that's a James Cameron staple. If James Cameron, if he doesn't give you details, it's he feels like he hasn't done his job.
That man knows how to stage an action scene. I'll say that. Chris Nicholson says, Drinker, have a drink on me and do a cheers to the fact that the Darkhour is 100% correct about you making your fans feel valued. Well, in that case, I will do a cheers to all of you guys. So, hold on.
So everybody knows this is actual shitty
Cheers.
tequila. So, this is like $5 tequila.
John Orchard says, Rock me, Amadeus, Falco lives. Nice. Jeff Peterson says, this is crazy. I own Last Action Hero, saw it the other day and thought, what would the Drinker think of this? Well, now you know, you've got my 2-hour version of it. Jake W says, Last Action Hero was a movie of the year for no reason other than bringing Charles Dance to my attention. I mean, that's a pretty good reason to like it, if nothing else.
Remember, he was cheaper than Alan Rickman.
That is true, yeah. Jeff Peterson says, next time Darkhour is on, you can talk about how much you love Rings of Power. I'm sure we'll love it.
Hey, I mean, I'm honestly like a little floored that people want to see me again. I'm not gonna lie. I will do it. If Drinker wants me on again, I will do it for everybody. Like I will take the day off of work, and which is what I did. Like Drinker gave me he asked me what on Monday. You were like, hey, you want to do this? And I was like, I will make it happen. You get the opportunity, you do it. And I will show up again, maybe have a few less shots of tequila.
No, have more next time.
Maybe. But I will come on again. Of course, if you want to talk about this after the stream, I'll 100% come on again if people want to see me again.
Cool, man. Thank you. Next one was Roscoe, who said, recently watched Dread based on your recommendation. Really nice film. Dread Anderson is really hot. Also, thoughts on Last of Us 1 remake. Ellie is gay, by the way. So, yeah, Dread is a fantastic film. Anderson is really hot, so I'm not going to dispute that one.
Dread was fantastic.
I don't really care about these fucking like HD remasters of old games. I played Last of Us 1, liked it at the time. That was enough for me. I don't really need to play a remastered version of it. From what I've seen as well, all they've done basically is make all the characters more ugly. So fuck it. I've got no interest in that.
There's one game that I loved that they remastered. Have you ever played Shadow of the Colossus?
Yeah.
The remaster, I believe it was for the PS3, maybe the PS4. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I loved that they remastered that because it was such a environmental and ambiance-based game that it was capped by the PS2 era. And that was a thing that I was really glad that they overdid, like that they redid. But I can understand like HD remixes. I'm a big fan of Metal Gear Solid. I'm kind of sick of them redoing those games over and over again.
Yeah. And so, generally speaking, I don't feel that Last of Us 1 can be improved that much. Like, I thought the graphics were perfectly fine previously. I thought the story was great. The characters were all good. And the acting was awesome. So, yeah, I'm fine with it as it was. JP says, where do you think the good writers went? Did they retire? No, I think probably they were pushed out because they weren't the right demographics. And
he's right there.
Yeah, no, I'm not that good. But like in terms of like Hollywood screenwriting and stuff, I literally think they were they were managed out the door. And I've heard from so many people who've told me similar things. Like they lost interest. They were kind of pushed out. They were told they weren't going to get any opportunities because they didn't, meet the diversity requirements. And so they just fucking left. And I think if you were a studio starting up now, you would be well advised to try and hoover up these people because you've got talented writers with a ton of experience that you could get for next to nothing, and they could write your scripts for you. If you don't care about diversity, then you could get actual talent again and get it for like really cheap. So that would be my advice. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
If you're a fan of Resident Evil, once again, I am writing the script.
Yeah.
I already wrote the first episode.
Johnny Z also said, Drinker, just wanted to show my love for Dark Harvest as well. Yay! Most superb brief I've had for quite some time. Sorry, I ordered it through Amazon Prime, though. Say hi to Tatiana for me. I will. Yeah, I'll let her out of her cage later and I'll tell her that you said hi. And yeah, thank you for getting Dark Harvest for me, man. And yeah, don't worry about buying it through Amazon. It's all good.
The money trickles up either way.
It does eventually, yeah. But yeah, that brings us to the end of all the super chats. So like, it's been awesome, and I want to say, Darkhour, thank you for coming on for this, man. Yeah, this has been a really interesting movie to discuss, and it's nice to be able to bring patrons and stuff on occasionally and give you guys like a chance to air your thoughts. So yeah, you've been a great guest for this. I think people have been really enjoying having you on.
Like I said, if you want to discuss afterwards, I will 100% come on again. I had so much fun. This is like a dream come true for me, guys. Like, really, it is. Like, I've said multiple times, like, I've actually wanted to just start a YouTube channel and start reviewing stuff and hopefully get like 20 people to follow it just so I can do this with Drinker. I don't care about like, and I think that this is actually an important thing. I wouldn't care. Like, I don't care about money. I don't look at it like, oh, this is a way to get rich. It was just fun. And it's, like, I think that's what a lot of people with these kind of things don't realize. You can just have fun with stuff. And this was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. I don't know how many people are in your chat right now. I can't see that. I'm on the.
You got about 1,500 watching you right now.
1,500. That's more people that have listened to me than ever. So, and it was about a movie.
It's weird at first, man, honestly, but you get used to it. Sorry.
Yeah, and it was it was a movie that I enjoy. Like, there's plenty of films out there that I have a lot of opinions on. So if people really are interested in hearing from me again, I'll definitely come on again. And I'll do even more. Assuming I have more than 2 days notice, I will do even more research. I mean, like I said, it's like, I was so excited when I saw that I that's all I've been thinking about for 2 days. Like, I was like, I got to make sure I watch the movie again. I got to take like 10 pages of notes. I have to make sure I have all these fun facts, It was definitely a fun experience, and even if it's the only one I ever do, it's awesome that it's out there forever.
That's it. Yeah, you become it's a bit of like, part of the Drinker legacy, I guess, whatever that counts for. But yeah,
the drunk tank legacy.
There you go. That could be your enduring legacy. But yeah, man, honestly, it's been a pleasure to talk to you tonight for this, and to everyone else that's joined us for this chat. Thank you for taking a chance on like not having like a big name creator or anything on tonight. Like, it was just me and one of my patrons, but like, it's been great to chat to him and to talk about a movie that I guess I would always wanted to cover as well. I thought it was quite an interesting one, and I will probably be on tomorrow night after having watched Rings of Power, so you can get my thoughts on it then. And yeah, that should be interesting.
I'm glad I don't have to watch it. You'll do that for me.
It should be something anyway.
It's funny because I get into arguments with people in my daily life who are still like fans of the MCU, which is fine. You can be a fan of it. It's fine. It just like you can like bad things. It's
all right.
Yeah, and like they're like, how do you know this stuff if you haven't watched it? I'm like, Mauler and the Drinker. Like, that's all I need. Like,
we try to be fair, I guess. That's where we come from.
And you guys are honestly, like, I was really surprised about your Prey review because like I think I told you it was spot on, exactly the way I looked at it. I was like, word for word, almost the same, and you were so fair to it. It's not even funny.
I had to like acknowledge, called it wrong with the trailer, but that's the way it goes. You didn't
fully eat crow. You ate like Raven, but it's
like some things I got wrong, some things I absolutely predicted right, but that's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, I guess tonight that's us for tonight. Thank you to you guys, thank you to my mods for as always doing a great job. And yeah, thank you for all the awesome super chats. But that is all we've got for today. So we're going to go away now.